Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Milsurp World, the podcast all about military surplus. Today, we are doing our country-themed video on Italy. Woo!
Italia.
I'm sorry for however long this has taken. We were set to go, and then somebody, I'm not going to say who, got sick, and then somebody, I'm not going to say who, had too much of a social life, and we couldn't get this scheduled until now. So, today I am joined by 4 other people. Go ahead and say hi, guys.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
How's it going?
Hello.
Actually, I just realized I forgot what we were going to decide on calling everybody. We're going to use Discord names or we're going to use first names?
It's a good question. Let's see.
It's the same for me.
Your first name is
Doesn't matter to me.
how to pronounce?
Exactly. And now my first name is Diego.
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 Okay. So we're joined by Diego, and who are you other 2 gentlemen?
Cody.
James.
Cody and James. Okay. So, James has been on before, right?
I have not. No, this is my first appearance on
Okay,
Milsurp World.
and then Cody, have you been on before?
I think this is third time.
Okay. So, we have 2 new people. So we'll start with James. Our first question, obviously, is what got you into military surplus, and what's your focus of your collection, I suppose.
Yeah, so my focus is Carcanos or Carcanos. There's a few on the wall right here, and got into those because they're relatively inexpensive. So I bought one and then saw a couple more over the last 4 or 5 years and figured why not build a collection out of them, especially as a guy in his 20s. What got me into Milsurp collecting, I think this story is pretty similar to everyone else, but growing up playing video games, Call of Duty, Saving Private Ryan, falling in love with M1 Garand, and then Boy Scout camp. And I think in like 2010, one of the parents showed up with an M1 Garand, and I'm like, I know that gun. And then let me shoot it, and I just fell in love. And then when I turned 18, I went out and bought an M1 Garand, and then I said, you know what, I want to build a collection from there of one type of rifle from each of the major powers in World War II, and then it just
Slippery
rolled
slope
on from there. So slippery slope, yep.
Yeah, slippery slope, that's for sure.
Yeah,
All right.
M1's a good first one.
No, it isn't. It's boring. Anyway, I'm just joking, obviously. Just riling up the crowd. Appreciate you being on here today. Diego, welcome. This is another of our international guests. Diego is joining us from his home in Italy.
Absolutely.
You have the most professional looking background too, Diego.
And look at his mic setup.
I know, it looks like you do podcasts for a living.
No, absolutely not. And it's really shitty. We have to move pretty soon from this house, so the shittiest it can get. It's just
It looks great.
Clump.
I think it looks great, man. Yeah.
Thank you. My English will be terrible for the first 20 minutes or maybe for the whole podcast, but I'll try my best.
It's okay. My English is bad too.
So, I got sucked into Milsurp, of course, because of Call of Duty, the first Call of Duty in 2001, maybe, and Medal of Honor before. It's a classic. It's one of the classic blunders. So yeah, of course, then video games, and then I got 18, and I got, oh wait, I can buy guns now, and so I got my gun license and started collecting guns around, and then I started reenacting, but that's a whole other topic.
That's another level of gun collecting.
Yeah.
That's when you go full crazy.
Yeah, sort of.
Reenacting though is really cool because it gives you a perspective on Milsurps that you wouldn't have otherwise. That's pretty. That's
Are
It
you
can
saying
get
that
really,
that extra 2 ounces makes a difference, Danny?
it can get really cool, or it can get really cringy. You know, the reenactment
Oh,
war
yeah.
is
oh yeah,
complicated,
yeah.
but we try to stay on the course and do our best.
Yeah, that's cool. So you mentioned getting your license when you turned 18. So I feel like we have to. We're not familiar at all with most European or Italian gun laws. So if you could just briefly describe like what entails getting a license when you turn 18 and kind of what you're allowed to get.
So when you get 18, you can go to your doctor. You can ask, hey doc, I want to get a gun license," and the doc say, "All right, you're good to go. You're healthy. You're sane of mind. Get." He gives you a paper. Then you get to another doctor from the state, from the country, and the doctor check the paper and say, look at you and say, "All right, you're good to go," and give you another paper. Then you go to a gun shooting range, Tiro Segno Nazionale here, and you get your training course. And then after all of this, you go to the police and you say, "Oh, I had my medical exams. I have the training course. Can I get my gun license?" And they check your crime sheet. Yeah,
Yeah, they check your criminal record.
criminal record. Thank you. They check your criminal record and say, "All right, you're good to go. Here your gun license, and that's it." And what you can get my first gun. Well, my first Milsurp was, and my first gun was my L1A1. So you can go semi-auto here without any issue. Just the day after I got my gun license, I jumped onto the market and went for this. So there is no particular limitations, no issues. Semi-autos are the way to go. And no full auto, of course, but you can inherit a gun license to get full autos. But they're not going to release new full auto licenses for forever. After the 1970s, after the terrorist period in Italy, they closed as much gaps, the legal gaps as they could. So no full autos anymore. And you can't have a 50 BMG gun, no 50 BMGs at all. But well, that's fine for everything else. Pistols, shotguns, everything.
Sounds pretty similar to a lot of U.S. States. Is there a limit to like the number of guns you can own?
Yes, officially yes, because I can have only about 12 semi-auto assault rifle features guns, but you can get another license to get as much guns as you want, and you can have 3 pistols officially, because pistols are sneaky; they can get everywhere. So dangerous. So you can have only 3 officially. Then, of course, you can get a license to get all the guns you want. So
So you can pay them more money to get around that.
Yeah, but it's like 30 for 60 euros, I think, for forever. So it's not that terrible. But the extra gun license is it's difficult to get. Sometimes they don't give it to you. Sometimes depends entirely on where your house is. It's not universal.
So could you run into a doctor, say that is anti-gun, as we say here, and just doesn't want to let you?
Really. No, that will be terrible for him, because that will be, you can go to a tribunal, to a courtroom, and just say, "Oh, that doctor denied me not a right, but denied me my papers. Why is that?" And you can go to another doctor and have it. No issues. If you have a bad medical record, of course, it's bad for you. That's it.
Yeah.
And
So I
I
have to ask about your L1A1. Is that like a legit British receiver?
Yeah.
On it, yeah.
Yes. It's not a receiver. It's all matching. It's
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it, but it's
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
literally all matching. The barrel is matching. everything is force matched, maybe, but it's matching. No DS arms, no imbels, just straight from Anfield.
Yeah. That's what we just have to, with all our freedom here in America, we have to deal with that. I don't know if you, this is a L1A1 right here behind me. And it's a kit. It's an Australian kit, but on an imbel receiver. So, because the British ones were always semi-automatic. Yeah.
Italy has a pretty robust gun culture, you would say, or is it more something that people in that community
it's complicated.
Partake in it, and it's kind of this strange thing.
It's complicated. It's like most people will know somebody that have a gun, a shotgun. The strange uncle that has a collection. The old grandpa that has the hunting shotgun. Everyone will have some kind of familiarity with guns, but not that much, especially towards the biggest cities. It's sort of like the US by this point of view. It's complicated. It's a niche thing. Yeah. Collecting Milsurps especially is a very, very niche thing. Within a couple of years, you get to know all the big names in the Milsurp collecting in Italy. So yeah, it's sort of niche, well, I don't get bad eyes, bad opinions when I say, oh yeah, I collect my Milsurps. I just say, oh, nice. It's strange, but all right, nice. Because they're all
they're old. Yeah, they're not as scary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When I show my AR-15 to some friends of mine, they just say, oh, that looks like a toy, and it's strange. It's not that scary for other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's complicated here too. So yeah, we understand that. Gun content in general is kind of weird on online now with YouTube and everything. It's shadow bans and whatnot. I'm pretty sure we're shadow banned. Like for a long time, the Milsurp World channel had like really good growth. Like it was like exponential growth, and I was pretty excited. And like I don't know, something happened, and I could see like the growth sort of plateau, and so I think we're feeling that here a little bit. But what was our topic again today?
The topic today is Italian rifles, but we're also needing to discuss our recent pickups. We always do a recent pickup. So, Diego, do you have anything recently you've acquired?
I have. Let's see. Beretta M34, of course, and let's see, small, niche, 9x18 Browning 38 per 380 ACP.
380, yep.
And from 1938, it's nice. A small little gun. I got a good deal for it. Let's see.
Danny, do you have like 6 of those?
No, I don't have one of those actually. I'm not a big Italian collector. I only have like 3 Italian guns, I think. Yeah, no. I'm gonna be fast. I haven't bought anything. Just bought not Danny since the house. Bought a house. Yeah, I'm house poor, so I haven't bought anything.
Yeah, on my end, yesterday I got in the mail a first variant or an early variant Moschetto without the upper handguard, which was my oldest Carcano, 1900 dated Brescia. So it's got a nice bore, and yeah, I needed that to fill a hole in my collection there. So.
All right.
Actually, have not picked up anything recently. I've been focusing on ammo lately, so no real firearms for me. Milsurp. I guess the closest thing I got was I picked this up, which I was really happy about. It's a little charger clip tin for the Vetterlis, which is really cool. It's the only one that I've ever seen that's not completely rusted out. I've only ever seen one other one, so pretty neat. That's all.
How
I
did
got.
they get the clips out without taking the twine off?
Well, so they would take two of these clips, and you'd take one, and the other one you'd flip around, and so you could have two of them, and they basically, uh, you know, take the space of one, and you could fit 6 of them in here, and then they'd tie it up. So then
Okay.
you would ship the clips out with this, and then you would just untie the string and take out the clips, and then the ammo would be boxed up separately, and you could load them up.
Oh, so they wouldn't come preloaded.
That's interesting.
No, you would get the tins with 6 clips, and then the ammo come in little boxes of 8, so that'd give you enough for 2 of these. This is back of this here. This just kind of fell apart. Because I mean, this is probably 130-year-old string on here. It's really crusty. So I got to.
Yeah, that's neat because those are obviously that's just meant to be thrown away.
Yes, and that's the reason there's like none of them around anymore. Because if you don't know what this is and you don't have the clips inside of it, if you just look at this,
yeah, it's trash. It's whatever. Yeah,
it's trash. Especially if you don't even have the string on it. It's just a literal square piece of metal. So. I saw go for sale a long time ago on eBay, and it was like the whole side of it was like wide open from rusting out. This one's no holes in it. It's got some rust on it that I gotta get cleaned off. But yeah, this is the only one that I've ever complete one that I've ever seen.
Disposable items are like the hardest to find, like that, because
that's what makes them cool, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very. That's like one of those things. Even like a widow would throw away and out of her husband's collection. As she's going through it or whatever. Yeah. Like that's just That's neat. That's neat. I want to ask how much it's worth, but I don't know if that's a tricky because there's only like 3.
The problem is when there's like none other that ever go for sale, you can't really say what it's worth, right? If there's like no market, you can't just come up with a value. It was on an auction and it came with the clip, and the auction ended for like $116, and these clips go for about $100. So I paid, like, after taxes and shipping, like $25 for it, which is a great example of something that is stupidly rare and not valued at all, as it should be. I mean, I think I had a max bid of like $400 on it. Get it, but clearly no one else cared, so I wound up getting it for next to nothing. So I was really happy about that.
Yeah,
that'll actually take us into our topic for the day if everybody wants to move on, because I don't have any recent acquisitions as well. Nothing on my end. No new M95s here. But our topic today will be about Italy's small arms from, I guess it's pretty much post-unification, right? So much like Germany, a lot of people, especially in the United States, don't realize that Italy as a unified country is actually fairly recent. It's 1861. 61?
Yeah, 17 of March.
Yeah. So that's a fairly recent, obviously, in the span of time frames. We expect a lot of people just assume you say Italy and you assume it's always been a country, unified country, and it's just not been a thing. We'll start with like some of their conversions. I'm assuming they did similar things to Germany, where they had muzzle loaders. I'm assuming correct, right?
Yeah. No, should I start?
Yeah, go ahead, Diego. We can just discuss it. We'll discuss it. I don't really have any pictures of it. I don't know if there's many pictures of them.
Well, don't worry. It's just there's after the First and Second Independence War, we had all kind of muzzle loaders, all kind of percussion cuts, flintlocks, whatever, and we just unified the country, and we gathered all kind of muskets, rifles, whatever, because every single nation in Italy had its own armament, its own supply chain. So when the country finally unified in 1861, they just had warehouses, plenty of all kind of flintlocks, all kind of guns. 1844, 1850, 1860, several models gathered all around. So in 1866, Sadova happened, the big battle between Austrians and Prussians, and where we had sort of a part two, because that was our third independence war. And so while Austrians and Germans battled each other at Sadova, how do you call it? Well, Sadova.
Adova.
Sadova, right. We tried to sneak into Austria. We tried to do our part into the war, just saying, "Oh, we can advance. We can take advantage of Austria being fighting the Germans." So we advanced and we fought our war, still with the percussion caps, muzzleloaders. But at Sadova, meanwhile, the Germans just mauled down Austrians with the Dreiser rifle. So we saw it and we said, maybe we should get into a breech loading rifle too. So we took, of course, the army had a contest. They said, "Oh, what we can do? We don't have the money to convert all the guns. We don't want to spend much money to convert all of the guns we have, because we don't want to spend money to build a new rifle. We don't have the money. We don't want to spend the money to build a whole new rifle, because technology is progressing far too fast. Today we have breech loaders. Tomorrow we'll have something else. We know that. So we have a limited budget, and we'll spend that limited budget not for a whole new rifle, but in a conversion." So they had their arsenals, the engineers at the arsenals, the project is correct. And of course, Salvatore Carcano arrives, and he says, "Oh yes, I have this project I'm working on for a breech loader, for a brand new breech rifle, loader rifle, but I can easily convert it to a conversion." So he just did that, and they started converting all muzzle loaders into breech loaders with the Carcano system. And that's pretty much it. They started converting first Vetterli carbines, and then they...
That depends on who you ask.
Yeah, we say it different.
That's the hotly debated one.
Exactly. So, and then they started converting most of the rifles around, and they had like five. Well, they had several iterations of the gun, because we have the Bersaglieri, Fanteria, we had the artillery, the Pontieri, the bridge builders. They had a special carbine just for them, and we have with the Carcano will be the last. The Carcano 1867 will be the last model with hundreds of variation for all the corps, because after with the Vetterli we'll simplify everything down to 3 guns for the army, 1 gun for the Carabinieri, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, the conversion was simple, effective. They converted it for a breech loader similar to the Dreiser with a bolt action, paper cartridge, quite simple. And that's pretty much it for the 1867 Carcano conversion. It's just very neat, a very simple conversion. That just works. But
So,
of course, Frantic will tell the rest.
We were talking about this pre-recording, but everybody that's picking up on this, he's not saying Carcano. You guys notice that?
Yeah, but
so we discussed this pre-recording, but so he's Salvatore is from the northern Italy.
Yeah, it's from
so
Varese, nearby.
So his name would be pronounced Carcano?
Carcano. Yeah.
Carcano. Not
Salvatore
Carcano. Just a different inflection, a different emphasis there. So if you really want to be sweaty at a gun show, you can tell everybody that it's not a Carcano.
Actually, it's pronounced
Yeah, but
Carcano.
We get
don't worry.
we get those people all the time because we say mon liquor or man liquor, and that's not how it's pronounced. Or you get the Garand or Gerund.
Or Garland.
Garand.
We were talking about Italian gun culture before. We get the Carcano wrong all the time. I myself will butcher it with saying just Carcano. Knowledge is difficult to get, especially when it's written on paper. So you just read Carcano, and where you're from, it will have an influence of how you pronounce it. Because, oh yes, I know, there is the friend of my uncle. Yeah, he's Carcano. Yeah, Carcano, kid. It's really different from place to place. So we'll get it wrong all the time, and we ourselves get it wrong as pronunciation. So officially, it's Carcano. But
All right.
everything goes.
So
It's Garand too, right?
yeah,
Name,
I
right?
believe his name was pronounced John Garand. But
Yeah, that's a hot one there.
you
and the
get
collecting
large
ones.
One in the U.S. People say Garand.
Yeah. I mean, you got to pronounce the guy's name right, but the rifle's pronunciation is still like, there's the people
What's
that say,
common?
well,
What's the name?
yeah,
It was the popular pronunciation that soldiers called it, even if it was incorrect.
yeah. That's the thing.
Soldiers actually call it that. Wouldn't they have just called it the M1? I mean, it wasn't officially called the Garand, right?
Yeah, why didn't they just call it the U.S. Rifle Caliber 30 M1?
Well, wouldn't they have just called it M1?
Or probably they would
M1
just
rifle,
call it
but they were all M1s, man. M1 rifle, M1 helmet, M1 tank. So
I was just thinking, like, would soldiers even know who made it? I would assume they'd just be given the thing.
if it was popularized through propaganda, they probably would have. I've seen it in a few black and white videos. I'm pronouncing it that way, I think. So
Okay.
You don't want to know how old boomers who got drafted in the army, in the Italian army, and calls Garand because they just go Garant with a final T, and they just go yeah. Every time we go reenacting, we have Carcanos all around, and they just say, I did the draft with it. It's a Garant. It's terrible, absolutely terrible.
that's cool. I forgot the Italians used it. That's funny. Yeah.
that was actually going to be a special surprise at the end there.
Uh-oh.
when we revealed it.
Uh-oh.
But so we have the unification of Italy. We have 3 wars for independence, and now we're reaching into the late 1860s, early 1870s, and Italy's like, okay, we want to simplify the thousands of variations of the conversions that we have. So I'm assuming they do tests. They have like a contest of sorts.
Yeah, they did regular trials for that, and there were a couple dozen rifles. There were at least 2 dozen, I think, entered. There were a lot of different rifles entered into that competition.
Do we have much detail on the trials, or is it kind of
get a
lost to
list.
history?
There's a pretty good list of all the rifles that went into the trials, and of course the Vetterli rifle book.
Yeah,
But
we will recommend the
decent number of
Vetterli
rifles.
rifle book to people. It is a very good resource for.
If it's on Amazon, I'll put it in the description of the video on YouTube.
Yeah, I think it is.
There's very few resources in English for a lot of this stuff. So
Weirdly, the Vetterli rifle book is sort of one of the best books about Vetterli in the whole world, even in Italian. So
It's a really good book. I mean, he did a
really good book.
fantastic job on it. But yeah, no, they had the Burton rifle that was in there. Of course, the gauges aren't going to hold up. So the Burton rifle, the Valdoco, obviously the Swiss Vetterli, the model 1868 that had the little gate over the loading port.
Danny called it the first assault rifle.
Yeah, I think so. I remember that. Yeah, there were a bunch of different.
I had to change that title pretty quickly because of the comments on that video.
You got blasted pretty hard for that.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of different variations and things. Was the Vetterli the only one with a magazine?
I think so. I think the Swiss Vetterli 1868 was the only one in the trials with the magazine.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
So at this point, we're still looking at big bore, black powder, but metallic cartridge. So we're advancing slowly. So what drew the Italians to the Vetterli as they ultimately went to it?
So obviously the way that they adopted it was a lot different from the Swiss model. They changed it from a repeater to just a single shot rifle, but the system,
that simplifies construction, I assume.
Yeah, that makes it a lot cheaper, easier to produce, and the same reason most other countries used single shot rifles. The doctrine of the time really was more focused on controlled fire directed by officers, right? So single shots were kind of what everyone wanted at the time that metallic cartridges started becoming a thing. But I mean, the rifle itself was, a good system with, dual symmetrical rear locking lugs. Swiss cartridge was a little bit smaller than the one that the Italians adopted. They would lengthen that cartridge just a little bit from, I don't remember if I get the two mixed up, the Swiss ones, because one's the military and I think one's the civilian. It's 10.4 by 38, and then there's 10.4 by 32. I forget I think it's 38 is the actual military one. And then they would make that 10.4 by 47. So they would lengthen that. So
how much more powerful is the Italian cartridge over the Swiss?
I couldn't tell you the exact answer, but original loading was 313 grain bullet under over 62 grains of black powder. So
the big bowling balls being shot.
Yeah. So Italy's Vetterli model 1870 got here.
Yeah. So quick question though. We see a lot of this in these videos we've done so far, and I'm sure we'll see it a lot in the future too, is that this is the first time we've seen a non-native design be selected immediately, I believe. Is there a reason why there was no Italian? Was there not much in the Italian arms industry at this point?
No, I will say that the Italian arms industry was on the same line overall with other contestants, but I think the Vetterli was pretty good compared to what Italian could offer, and was pretty advanced for its time overall. So,
well, we see a lot of times with this. There's a lot of issue with nationalism and bias towards picking a native design. You also see issues with state secrets too, because they don't want to have somebody else to be able to look at the design. That it was just interesting to me that, I mean, so far we've done Germany, we've done Austria-Hungary, and these are all like, they didn't choose a design that was outside of the country. They chose and purchased the design that was from a native citizen.
To me, the question is, why didn't more people adopt the Swiss Vetterli? It was the first, magazine-fed bolt-action rifle. I think it was pretty advanced for the time when you look at that was in the 1860s. You got the magazine-fed Vetterli.
I think that's the exact reason why there, Danny, is cost and cost. You have a couple of factors here. You have cost. You have complexity because you have countries that don't necessarily have the industrialization capacity to produce something like that, and then you have the doctrine, which is what we just talked about with why Italy chose the single shot is because the doctrine was like, why would I give these soldiers more ammunition to waste?
Yeah,
especially we always got to come back to the idea too is that they're hauling this shit around on themselves or on horses. There's no like cars or shit. There's no planes. So
yeah.
So
I mean it more just like it's not so much like why did the Italians adopt a foreign, Swiss design. It's just like why didn't more people around them adopt it? Because
that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying in general is that, and overall, I think it's
symmetric bolt lugs, right? Symmetric. It was the first rifle with symmetric bolt lugs, which is also really big deal.
Oh yeah, it was definitely an advanced design.
Yeah. So
you have something there.
I was going to say, Giovanni and Alberto's book, they were saying when they were shopping around for a new design, they announced a competition in Italy to introduce a new design, and no one entered the competition. So they had to. It looked like they were shopping around a little bit with the Germans, Dutch, and Swiss. I don't know if that's correct, but that's what they were talking about in this. So. Maybe there just wasn't enough interest domestically to come up with something new.
It's possible. I know we already talked about Carcano. He seems like the Italian, I don't know,
Nambu or something.
The Italian Mauser, the Italian Mannlicher, Ferdinand Mannlicher, maybe, where he's like the designer that is the well-known designer from that country. But I don't. He didn't do any design for this. It seems like.
I'm sure he tried something, but he was quite limited by the time, by everything, and he wasn't really a chief engineer back then. And also, Carcano was really good for many things. He was a good. Innovative designer. He tried new materials, new machines. He invented tons of things. He was really a good inventive man. He was really sturdy. He was really inventive, modern, progressive for firearms, materials, steel, machinery, whatever. But even for the 1891 Carcano, it didn't make huge work. He just recycled his safety system. He copied here and there pieces. He just simplified it all.
So more of an innovator versus an inventor.
Yeah, a good engineer. He was a good engineer. Yeah.
That's what this is saying. His biography, I'm looking at Wikipedia, is saying that he is really well known for his updates to machinery to work for precision working in rifle parts. Is that he was really big as far as fixing machinery and updating machinery and inventing and innovating ways to produce this stuff domestically.
He was not John Browning. He was not an inventor with thousands of ideas constantly. But he was a good engineer. He was there. He was working, and he was doing a Nambu. He was Nambu is a good comparison because Nambu take the pieces, put them together, and try to take the best out of them. So Nambu, yes, is a good comparison. A good engineer.
Just got his name stuck to it. To one of the most
going
iconic.
back to what you said earlier about why didn't other nations adopt the Swiss Vetterli, I would think in hindsight it's almost a good thing most of them didn't. I mean, really, you only had about 15 years between the adoption of metallic cartridge rifles to the introduction of smokeless powder, and then everybody went to small bore repeaters. And I mean, in hindsight, the Vetterli, the Swiss Vetterli it becomes very obsolete pretty quick because of the tube magazine, where as soon as you're out of ammo with that thing, you're basically stuck with a single shot. And there's not really a good way to convert that tube magazine to a box magazine. Whereas at least most of the single shot rifles that other countries adopted, you could do that. So there aren't a lot of them. I mean, obviously the Italians did it with their version of the Vetterli, and then the Dutch did it with the Beaumont using the same exact magazine. But I guess it kind of would have been a bit of a waste of money to spend all that getting Swiss Vetterlis for other countries and then have them be more obsolete.
Yeah,
Tell that to the Austro-Hungarians.
I mean, I was gonna say 15-year stretch for a bolt, like for a mainline rifle. I feel like at that time period is pretty good, because like you have a lot of countries going to them really really quick, like the German 1871/84, right? The when they might have put a 2 mag on the Mauser single shot, and 1884, which is 15 years later.
Right? The 7184 is a completely different rifle as far as
it's a separate production. They're not conversions.
Yeah, it's its own, but essentially it is with modified to work with the magazine, of course. But it's the same sort of Mauser action and everything, just kind of modified to work with the.
They didn't take old 71s. No,
okay.
No, they didn't take old 71s and convert them. They basically made a new model and said, okay, it's like a new car. Like, this is the same model but new version.
Yeah, and I would like, and up until 1886, like the Swiss Vetterli, really, I feel like it could hold its own against any rifle, and it's obviously better than all the single shots, the Swiss Vetterli. So, and
Danny
what?
And I have an opinion about the big bore rifles being the best, and he's of the Swiss Vetterli, and I'm of the 1886 Mannlicher. But
that's an 1860s design versus an 1880s design. But we got so you do have, if more countries adopted it, you would have a good 15-year stretch, which isn't it isn't nothing, because a lot of countries.
And there was no, and I think that I believe I know from just our discussion here that smokeless did catch a lot of these people flat-footed. Nobody was really super prepared.
Yeah, small bore smokeless. Yeah, because you have countries that adopted the 1886 Kropatschek or the 1886 11mm Mannlicher rifle. Countries adopted that, and those were obsolete the year they were adopted. So I feel like there was just a lot of waste. During that time period. So, but I think I'm like a pretty big Swiss Vetterli defender, though. I think it was probably the best rifle in the world for a good 10, 15 years, maybe, because the Kropatschek, which is like the Mauser 1884 style, or like the Lebel style loading, where you have to open up the bolt, versus the King style loading gate on the Italian or the Swiss Vetterli, I feel like is more of a debate on like which is better. But I kind of feel like even the King's loading gate might have an advantage, because the bolt can stay closed while it's being loaded. Don't have to cock the action, twice necessarily to load the first round. So, it's not an episode on Swiss Vetterli, so I'll just leave it there.
Danny got sidetracked because we talked about Vetterlis.
Yeah.
So the 1870 is the first model, correct?
Yep.
So what do they do? I'm assuming, based on everything else we've talked about here, we have a long rifle and then a cavalry carbine.
Yep. So they adopted the infantry rifle. They adopted a cavalry carbine. Those were the first two. Later, they would adopt. I mean, it was way later. In 1886, they would adopt the carabinieri pattern. I don't know why they waited so long to do it, but they also had the troop special rifle.
You want to know why they waited so long for the carabinieri? Because the carabinieri basically got, while the army was getting the 1870s Vetterlis, the old Carcano 1867 went to the Carabinieri, went to the police, went to everyone else. So
So they're like the
Carabinieri-
Marines. They get the stuff. They get the secondhand stuff.
yeah, you have to understand that Carabinieri are military police, but also sort of they are the French gendarmerie. I don't know if the gendarmerie is the same, but they were the old police, the old military police that were all around Italy, getting against bandits, against thieves, against everyone.
A national
Then-
police force.
Sort of, because they were military, but they were all around the nation. Then we had the real national police force that were the Guardia di Pubblica Sicurezza, but that was at the end of the 1800s. But yeah, the Carabinieri, they didn't have a direct infantry role until World War One, basically. So they got all the surplus, all the old carbines, because they didn't need a lot of nice brand new guns. But then in 1886, I think they got a nice carbine to go along.
You're muted.
Mute myself there. So what they changed from the Swiss Vetterli, obviously they made a single shot rifle, which actually makes this a really gorgeous rifle. It's incredibly sleek,
Nice lines.
really
Yeah.
good, especially with that trigger guard that they used on it.
Yeah, the nice big fancy trigger guard.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous rifle.
Now, is
So-
that for gloves? Is that like an idea like the it looks like there's a lot of space in that trigger guard. Is that like because you would be wearing gloves or something?
I think it's essentially the same one that was on the Swiss, just
Oh,
slightly.
okay.
But yeah, there's tons of space in here. It is nice for shooting too. You can use another finger here to hold on to it, so it gives you some good support. But like we said, symmetrical rear locking lugs, which was really nice. It was a really strong action here. The locking lugs were on a separate piece from the bolt, which wasn't the best, but still very strong action on the rifle here. And of course, it had a dust cover, like most rifles at the time. So rotating dust cover that will cover up your
That's fancy.
action port there.
I didn't know they had dust covers.
Yeah, I mean, the dust covers were on the original ones, and they kept cutting them into smaller pieces with each modification. So the little rotating rings on the 87s and the 15s are the original dust covers, just chopped to crap. So
Why even have them on there at that point?
I mean, I guess at that point it just wasn't really deemed necessary. Not really sure why. Yeah, I don't really know. I don't really know an exact answer as to why.
So, who were the manufacturers for this?
That was the factory Torino, Brescia, Torre Annunziata, and later on with Terni. Terni didn't start until 1884. I think it was a while. Terni was one of the later ones, but the first three were Torre Annunziata, Torino, Brescia, and I think Brescia was the very first. They started first. So the first year that these started coming out was like 1872. I don't think I've ever seen one dated 1871. So they started making these in 1872. And then production of these would go up through 1892. So you can find these dated 1892, same year as the earliest Carcanos, which is pretty
Wow,
neat.
that's interesting.
You can get a Vetterli and a Carcano made in the same year at the same factory, which is really, really cool.
Oh, all right. So obviously the next step in the evolution here is what we've already discussed, which is the addition of the box magazine. There you go.
So starting in 1887, they would take these Vetterlis and start adding the box magazine signed by Giuseppe Vitali, which is pretty really nice modification here. Originally, they would just cut out the bottom and add the magazine in there with no support around it, and they had an issue with stocks cracking. So when you see these, most of the times you'll see this metal plate that surrounds the magazine here. That's to add some support for the stock. So this modification really just involved, they did open up the ejection port to be a lot bigger. There's a lot more room here. Obviously, they had to cut away the bottom of the receiver to allow the magazine to be there. And then on the sides, and the lighting's not good enough to see it really, but on the sides, they added, you can kind of see it right there, the screw head. There's cartridge stops on either side. So they drilled, tapped some holes in here and then made some cuts where the cartridge stops would go through.
So as we just discussed with
You can see that right there.
So as we just discussed with the Mauser, is this a conversion or a new model or both?
So these were all conversions. And these were done essentially to all of them. They really, with the exception of ones that were for some reason deemed unfit for conversion, they took pretty much all of their 1870 Vetterlis and converted them to the Vitali magazine.
Makes sense.
So what years did they do those conversions? Sorry.
Starting in 1887.
1887. Okay, so they're still making Vetterlis at the time. So it's possible that brand new single shots would be made into those at the factories, or?
So once they officially adopted this, any new ones would be produced to this this pattern, while anything produced before was updated to it.
Is there a way to tell which ones were new manufacture versus conversions?
You just look at the date. I mean, if it's made after 1887, it's made as a 1887. Yeah. Otherwise, it's probably converted. Sometimes you'll see stamps on the stock. Like you'll have a stamp with a date on it, but it's not really easy to tell if that's just a general repair or a conversion because it'll just say Riparazione. Gonna butcher that one, but there's really no way to tell. So you just look at the date on them. And like I said before, this is what used to be the old dust cover. They cut it down, so it's really just this small little piece, but it does function. You'll be able to see it, maybe. There you go. So you can see that.
Yeah, a little bit.
So this functions as a magazine cutoff. So you can put your 4 rounds in and then rotate this ring off to into a single shot rifle. And then all you do is rotate this over to the left, and now you've got the full magazine.
Magazine cutoffs very popular still with the time period.
The clip that they used for this also, I mean, these are really it's a smart clip. It's just a little piece of wood with some tin strips nailed into it. There's nothing fancy or expensive about this, and there's nothing there's like no tolerance really. I mean, you can make these by hand, and as long as you get it to be about that shape, it works. So they actually work really, really, really well. You can run these things in and out in no time at all. So it's actually a very fast rifle to reload with these clips. And I would say that once they adopted this, I would 100% take this over a Swiss Vetterli because you can absolutely fire and reload a lot faster with these clips than with that tube magazine.
Yeah. Packet loading is definitely the way to go.
Now that's not a in-block clip. That is
This is I guess you would call this a charger clip because the way this works is you're pushing this down, and it doesn't have. I don't have any dummies in here, so I don't want to bend this by pushing.
No, I got you.
Pushing this down with your thumb and then ripping it back out, and these little tabs will just bend out, and once those cartridges are locked under the cartridge stops, they're going to stay in there. You'll pull the clip back out.
So you push the clip into the magazine, and then the rounds stay in the magazine, and you remove the clip. So it's kind of probably more of a charger, I guess. If the terminology sticklers.
An in block is needed to is
It has to stay in.
Yeah,
has to stay in because it provides it's the feed lips.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
part of the magazine system itself. Oh, wow. So I'm assuming, just like the original version, we have short carbine versions of this as well.
So the only other rifle they added the magazine to was the Troop Special rifle. And then they did do 500 of the cavalry carbines. They gave them the Vitali magazines. That was specifically for Eritrean cavalry. There are like 4 or 5 of those left today. They are of those 500. They are incredibly scarce. There's somebody in Australia who has one in his family, but they didn't do it to the Carabinieri except for an experimental prototype. That's what I showed earlier in that little book. And then the only other modification on here from the 1870 was they added this support rail back here, which they believe it's just brazed onto the original tang. Because you can see the seam if you take the tang off. I think they just brazed this on here. So they just added this rail back here, and that kind of gives the sear, or not the sear, the sear engagement part of the firing pin something to ride in. So that way, when you're cycling this quickly, kind of stays on track.
Yeah.
Eliminates bolt wobble.
These bolts are a little wobbly, and it gets much worse the more they converted them. The original really didn't have that problem at all. I mean, the original had like very little
Oh,
wobble.
wow, yeah.
And that didn't matter anyway because you were doing single shot. You didn't need to rapidly operate the bolt. But once you had a magazine, and they made some modifications to the bolt too for the Vitali 1887 update, it got a little bit more wobbly. So the support rail helps with that.
So, what was Italy's take on the crisis, the arms race of the smokeless powder? So obviously, 1887, they're doing the Vetterli, the changes to with the magazine updates. So are they scrambling to find smokeless, or are they just like, okay, we're just going to do this update, and then maybe eventually we'll move into smokeless?
Oh, Chronicle left.
Yeah.
Maybe he will show you something
Oh,
better.
he's got something. There he's got.
Yeah, so sorry. So Italy did wind up just adopting smokeless powder ammunition for the Vetterlis. That was the 90 cartridge. So they just took their round. They changed their bullet from a 313 grain lead bullet to a 240 grain jacketed bullet. It's not plated; it's jacketed.
Okay.
And the load in this was, I think it was 3 grams of ballastite. It's either 3 or 4. I don't remember exactly. But they would adopt the M90 round starting in 1890. Though occasionally I have found some rounds dated 1889. So that makes sense, though. They just weren't officially adopted then. But so they would just adopt smokeless.
Well, that's their immediate take is instead
Their
of
stopgap,
trying
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they would go and back and recite all these rifles. So pretty much every single Vetterli you'll find like this today is going to have smokeless powder sights. So that's this long sight here that's got this weird piece in the center. Those are the smokeless powder sights. The original sights are not like this. It's a very traditional V-notch. So almost every depiction of the Vetterli rifles that you see, the Italian ones, they'll use the smokeless powder sight. And then they also offset the front sight slightly to the right to account for the new ballistics of the smokeless ammunition.
Yeah, that's interesting because if they started producing that in 1890, then speed of government, they were probably working on that for a couple of years. I know a lot of countries like smokeless powder formula was like a state secret. So I'm
And it
assuming.
also took some of them a couple tries to get it right. Looking at you, Austria-Hungary.
Smokeless powder was absolutely a secret, a state secret, and Italy would have been far, far, far slower in getting a smokeless powder if it wasn't for Nobel, because the Alfred Nobel,
Yeah.
just tried to offer a smokeless powder to France, and they said, "No, we have powder B. We don't need your powder." So he just went, "All right, I'll go to somewhere else." And he goes to the Italians, and they say, "Oh, you have smokeless powder? Wonderful. Come in, please. Absolutely. Put a factory, put whatever. We'll give you money. Don't worry. Here." And so Alfred Nobel comes in Italy and just to create a huge factory. It will be a huge factory, the dynamite Nobel factory here in Italy. But yeah, of course, France isn't happy at all of someone else of Nobel giving smokeless powder to Italy because, well, it's complicated. But Italy and France at this moment are not really in.
I mean, nobody in Europe got along with France super well. Oh, he froze. Well, he'll come back. So their immediate reaction, obviously, is to build a smokeless version. Well, obviously, to get to I guess just luck into the fact that Nobel came back with an idea to get them smokeless, so they got smokeless powder. Immediate idea is to convert the black powder round to smokeless. That makes sense. The Austro-Hungarians did that too. Well, kind of. They converted them to a small bores. So the other, I guess, quickly moving forward, then it's 1891 is where we get into the Carcano. So very quickly we see, like, I mean, as you Danny said, the speed of government. That's pretty quick for a small bore smokeless powder design to come out. I mean, he's come back. Here he is. Sorry about that, buddy. You lost connection there.
Yeah, completely my fault. Absolutely.
It's okay. So we were talking. You were saying that Italy didn't get along with France, and I was like, who gets along with France?
Yeah, because Italy at the time was sort of joining the Triple Alliance with Germany and Austria, and they got in a conflict with the Papal State in 1870s, and the Papal State in Rome was extra friend with France. We were sort of friends, sort of not. Diplomatic issues, as also scrambles in Africa, Berlin Conference and so on. And so France wasn't really happy with Nobel giving smokeless powder away, and they just sort of exiled him. And but that's how Italy got smokeless powder in no time, and they had the chance to use it as a stopgap measure in the Vetterli. Meanwhile, of course, in 1889 they started the trials to get a new rifle, a new smokeless, more caliber rifle, to get ahead with more.
And that's what I was saying as you disconnected. I was saying that it's kind of an interesting take because, so I know Austro-Hungarian history, which is a very similar design path too. Is that they had the big bore black powder cartridge rifle, but instead they couldn't get smokeless as quickly because they didn't have somebody just come up and say, "Hey, I'll sell you this idea for smokeless." And so they shifted to a small bore, but it's semi-smokeless. It's like a smokeless mixture with black powder, and then eventually they figured out how to get to smokeless. But that's not until I want to say 1890, 1891 when they finally finalized the 8x50R. I'd say 1890. So when they finalized the 8x50R smokeless round, so that's pretty fast. I mean, you're just talking about Italians kind of just got really lucky there with Nobel. It seems like, and France being France.
Absolutely.
But so we move into, I guess, the Carcano then.
Frank has anything else to say about Vetterli?
I think the Vetterli is going to be on pause and for another about another 25 years here, and then they'll make a return in the next season.
A surprise return. Before we move off the
Right.
Vetterli, hold on. Before we move off the Vetterli, did Italy sell this design to anybody? I don't know if there was any selling of it. So
I mean, I don't know if they. No, they didn't. I don't know how that would work anyway, since they were licensing it from the Swiss already. I don't know if they could just turn around and then sell it. But no.
They just all completed the rifles, but that's it. Just a surplus. But not the patent, not the licensing.
yeah, it makes sense. I was just seeing if it was moved anywhere else, but we do know that they ended up in a lot of different places due to Italy's involvement in World War One and Two. So they do end up in a lot of places. So we'll move into the Carcano. Diego, you're really scratchy all of a sudden. Can you?
Yeah, you're blurry.
I'm noticing this too. I think because I had to connect with my cell phone. Let's see. Reconnect with my phone.
Okay.
So before we get into the rifle itself, if we could talk a little bit about the cartridge itself, because I think 6.5s are kind of, there's been a resurgence in the popularity of 6.5s, and I don't know who was the first. I think they definitely, Italy had it before the Scandinavian countries and before Japan, right? Because Japan got it in 1902, I think.
Yeah. From what I'm reading here, correct me if I'm wrong, they developed the cartridge before they even developed the rifle. And so the Small Arms Commission, I think, created two barrels, one for a 6mm and one for 6.5, and then sent those out just to see which ballistics were better. And then sounds like they developed two rifles, right? A number 1 and a number 2, but I don't know enough about the prototypes and that. And the commission got together to test those.
It's a bit more complicated because first they developed the cartridge. They decided the weight, how it would be, how the rifling will be, because it's infamous that the Carcanos in the first years had gain increased rifling. That's because basically I'm here, yeah. The commission just studied the bullets, and they saw, oh yes, the 6mm is good, 6.5mm is better. Let's see how it goes. And when they started shooting it all, they went with a lead bullet with a coating and not real jacket, as far as I understood it. So yeah, the bullet was twisting too far, was gaining the twisting too fast. And so it was basically disintegrating into barrels. Maybe I'm butchering English. I'm butchering.
That makes sense.
All right, that's what I gathered. And so they just started saying, "All right, no, let's go with lead bullet, full metal jacket with Milsurp. It's the nickel plated.
Yeah, 15 to 16. It said it's a 15 to 16% pure nickel and copper, cupro nickel.
Cupro nickel, that's it. And they went with that kind of jacket, and it's pretty good. It's really, really, really good against corrosion. I still go out here in First World War battlefields. I dig up and I find original bullets with no corrosion at all or little corrosion. Cupro nickel is really, really, really good to maintain bullets against corrosion. It's wonderful. So yeah, they found the bullet, they found the weight, found the shape of the bullet, and with a 162 weight grain bullet, and they chose a barrel with a gaining twist, and they gave a regular twist barrel to the various manufacturer to cover the huge secret of the gaining twist rifling, and so they gave to tons of contestants. Here too, we have Lee, we have Mauser, we have Maliker, we have all kind of contestants in these first trials, and they all basically got refused, mostly because of cost, manufacturer cost, licensing costs, patents, and so on. And after the third trial, they go to the national arsenals and they say, guys, we need to go cheap. We need to go as cheap as we can. Can you give us some good action, something good? And so you have the Torino arsenal with Salvatore Carcano. We have the Terni arsenals and the other Italian arsenals, each one giving an action to the contest. I know that Vitali contributed to the contest. Carcano, of course, contributed to the contest, and they still tried them against the commercial competition with Mauser, Mannlicher, and so on. But at the end, they ended up with two rifles, one with a Carcano action and one with a Terni action. I don't really recall, but it's basically really similar to a Vitali product, so I will call it the Vitali, sort of. And they test these rifles, but with the Maliker system, because they say, oh, everything is too expensive for these trials. Every other commercial gun is really expensive, but we really love the Maliker system. So you have to try this rifle and this rifle with the Maliker system, and we'll see which one is better with the Maliker system. And so they give it to infantry to go on with trials, and they just came up with the Carcano system because it's nice, it's simple, it's cheap, it's easy to disassemble, easy to field strip on. It's just efficient. It's just the Nambu concept of efficiency. Just easy to strip down, easy to maintain, easy to for the standard soldier. And cheap. Of course, it's cheap. It's cheap to manufacture.
Yeah, I was looking here at the Wikipedia for the 6.5 Carcano, well, the 6.5 by 52 millimeter, I should say, because Carcano did not actually do anything with this cartridge. It looks like Major Antonio Benedetti of Brescia was a big proponent of it, and was secretary of the commission. And so he pushed really hard for either the 6 or 6.5. So he's kind of like the one that strong-armed it. Interesting, it also says that the original ballistite load was considered too hot and not stable under severe climate conditions, and that they did test cordite, British cordite, but decided that it was not good enough. So they developed their own new propellant, which they adopted in 1896 and never changed it.
Yeah, the first generation of smokeless powders were really hot, were really corrosive, had high peak pressures, high temperatures, really. And so it was one of the reasons they went with the Ganning twist rifling also, because the Ganning twist got corroded really fast, really quick by the bullets, but also because of the ballistite, because it was really demanding. It was a really demanding smokeless powder, and so they adopted it. They went with it, but meanwhile they started studying their own smokeless powder, and they arrived with solenite in 1896.
So to understand too, when I say hot, I don't mean powerful. I mean actual temperature too. So ballastite temperature wise spiked at 3,500 degrees Celsius, which is very very hot.
Yeah.
And solonite was stable in 2,600 degrees Celsius. So yeah, they went to a less hot version later on. And Danny, you are right. Looking at 6.5 calibers, the Italians are the first to officially adopt a 6.5 caliber in 1891. The next would be the Romanians.
Swedish, right?
No,
Oh, the Romanians.
Oh yeah. Forget about them.
6.5 by 53R is 1893.
Yeah. All right.
And then you have the Swedish with 6.5 by 55 in 1894. And then you have the Arasaka, which is in 1897. So
I don't know why I thought that was so much earlier for the Arasaka.
Well, I mean, they're all right in line with each other. Within the space of 10 years, they adopt it. So, but yeah, the Italians are the first to pick a small bore cartridge that is a lot smaller than most of the other countries in the surrounding areas. 8mm seems to be the go-to size for most places. Obviously, advantages are smaller material production usage, less weight to carry around, flat shooting, better penetration at long range. Something you would run into in Italy with a lot of different terrain heights and stuff like that with the mountains and stuff. Something they did run into in World War One. But so you have a good reasoning a good reasoning for them to adopt a 6.5.
Another reason that is often reported in the, especially in the old books, is that they wanted to put as many rounds as you can in a single load. They wanted to have as many rounds as you can on the soldier, because, well, you have we discussed it a couple of days ago with Farantic about we had not yet, but yeah, we had the clashes in Africa. We want to have as many around as you may carry around. So yeah, we want to load in a single clip. You want to load as many rounds as you can. So with a small bore round, you can get 6 instead of the 5 of the Germans, or 5 of the Mali clips. So you want to have
you get an extra cartridge. Yeah, it does provide some an advantage in that. Now, do they ever adopt a Spitzer bullet for it, or is it stay the round nose?
We adopted a couple of Spitzer bullets. One is the armor piercing, because in the First World War, of course, we needed to penetrate even more the opposite trenches, the opposite sandbags, whatever, bunkers. So we developed an armor piercing bullet, and it was a Spitzer bullet. And then we had some trials during the 1920s, looking for a new bullet, looking for a new cartridge, but it was just trials. It was just an elongated Spitzer bullet. It's nothing like the.
So they never officially adopted a Spitzer cartridge or Spitzer bullet for the cartridge.
No, not officially, not on a massive scale.
Not a massive, not like bullets. A full conversion to Spitzer. Okay.
No, exactly. We prefer to switch, but we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, the short-lived successor that didn't live.
Were there concerns? Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Were there concerns? We were talking about the individual soldier being able to carry more 6.5 ammunition than if it was 8mm. Were there concerns about supply line laggings or issues of, hey, you're going to be marching longer distances, you may be cut off from military supply lines, so we want you to be able to carry more ammunition in the event that happens? I don't know if that was a consideration.
I think that that was taken into consideration because we had some issues with supplies during the Independence War because we had very fresh the supply line and we had several problems, not big problems, but there were shortages, there were issues. We had to walk thousands of miles into enemy territory. So having everything with you, it's pretty good overall. So I think that that came into mind when they developed it. But also just to just to have volley fire, it's good to have one more round compared to the enemy because yes, it's the 800. We're still going to take information, go forward, and to dampen the ammunition.
The start, definitely the idea of 1891. Yeah, you're still not necessarily thinking of trench warfare. I mean, it has shown up in time to time in different battles, but we're not talking like a massive front being the entirety of the whole conflict.
Not really. Not
no,
yet.
yeah.
Not especially with the old generals, with the old officers.
Did they so did they license the Mannlicher concept, or is that something that is like, did they just
stole it?
Inspired by?
No, they officially, all sources I read, they just bought the license. The price is different between sources. Some say 300,000 liras, some say 5 million liras. So I would say 300,000 is the most realistic licensing one.
So they did purchase the license for it. Okay.
It was clear under the sun.
Because as we've discussed in the past, we know that Mannlicher was litigious. He did like to go after people. So he went after Lee, and Lee went after him for the in blocks. It just so happens that they just did it on accident together. But so I wouldn't be. I was like, I wouldn't think that they would have stolen it and he would have just let that go. So he definitely wouldn't have let that go.
But also Italy was allied formally with Austria at that time, so it was.
Yeah, it would make some sense that they would definitely want to assist them in some way.
I wanted to, before we got too much into the Carcano rifle itself, I wanted to explore a little bit of the cost aspect of it, because I think a lot of times when people talk about some of the shortcomings of the Carcano, the sort of rebuttal to that is, well, it was cheap. It was all about cheap. This is a cheap gun. Italy couldn't afford much. And I wanted to bring up the fact that I think the Vetterli was a much more complicated and probably much more expensive action to produce. So I guess I wanted to know, does anybody know a cost estimate, outside of the tooling up cost for the Carcano, but the cost per rifle of the Italian Vetterli versus the Italian Carcano? How much cheaper was it? Was it really that much cheaper? Because if to me, if cost was such a factor, then why would they have produced the Vetterli for such a long time? And then if it really was a cost thing, did something come up that the Italian government was trying to cut costs, or was it just, let's just make it cheaper? Because
the real thing, that's my opinion, that we have to realize is that for these guns, labor wasn't really expensive, because all of these guns were made in national arsenals. So the already cheap Italian labor was even cheaper because they were people just employed by the state, by the
government workers. So
government workers. So it was manpower was cheap, worked hours were cheap. So you'll see all the time in Italian ordnance that you'll have extra complicated things, but cheap materials. When you have cheap materials, you can get all the manpower you want, all the employees you want, just as long as the raw materials are cheap. And that's quite important in the Carcano development, because all the Carcano barrel actually use as little special metals as possible. while other countries just went with special alloys of steel, special alloys of whatever, with nickels, with chromium, with whatever. The Italian requirements were much cheaper, especially for the barrels. And this is especially one of the reasons because we adopted the 268 bullets against the 264 bullets because we wanted the barrels to last as much as possible. Really, so it's time to talk about the difference between the 264 and 268 rifling of the Carcanos. So yeah, on the commercial market, you'll find all kind of Carcano bullets, all kind of Carcano ammo, and most of them will be loaded with the classic 6.5 bullets with 264 diameter. But really, you won't put into your Carcano the 268 bullets because the original ones were 266 around, about 266. But you also don't want to put the some 268 bullets. Wait, I'm losing my mind. So the Carcano is a bit different than other 6.5 guns. As I said just earlier, the barrels have a deeper rifling than other 6.5. Please interrupt me if I'm going to convolute in my...
No, you're all right.
Right. So while the other 6.5 guns will have a rifling of about 264 diameter, the Carcano have a deeper grooves to last longer, as long as they could, especially because the steel with for the barrel was not extremely cheap, but was as cheap as possible. It was bent steel. It was a special product, but still with as little special metal as possible. So they wanted it to last as longer as possible, and so they went with a deeper rifling compared to the other 6.5 guns you will find around. Was I clear enough?
I think so. Yeah.
And so, if you want to shoot with a Carcano, you have to look for a 268 bullet, but you don't want to use all kind of 268 bullets because someone fucked up, sort of. But Frantic will intervene and share his opinion about this, maybe.
Yeah, the Hornady 268s are not a good bullet. Those are pretty problematic ones. So I think one of the things you didn't mention about the original Italian 6.5 Carcano bullet was that the base of the bullet was open so that it would expand into the rifling. So they didn't use a 268. They had something that was closer to a 266 with an open base that would obturate into the rifling. And the problem is modern 264 bullets aren't going to do that because they're going to be fully jacketed. And that's one of the reasons they have such a bad reputation here, at least, is when you're shooting with 264s, they're not accurate at all. And unfortunately, the only solution, which isn't really the best thing anyway, is to just oversize the bullet and force it into the rifling, which is, like I said, it's not even the best thing to do.
Yeah, there are some rifles, some carbines that will shoot 264 bullets without any issue.
Sometimes they work. Yeah, it seems to be very. If you got one that's got a very good bore, like was not shot much, very tight bore, you can get 264s that work well with it. But anyway, the Hornady 268s. Those are a problem. I mean, they've been discontinued for a while, so not very common to find them. But those bullets are a 268, and it's the same style, the torpedo bullet. And when they were testing it, the issue they had was jackets were getting stuck in the barrel, and then the lead core would blow through the jacket and go out the barrel. So they were getting pieces of jacket stuck in the barrel. And they remedied that by just making the jacket thicker. So those 268s have a very thick jacket on them. And there was a write-up that I read from when that bullet came out. Somebody bought like thousands of them, and they got together dozens of different rifles and tested them out.
There's a
And
picture there. Kind of hard to see. Your quality is not the best.
No, you're all good. The top here is the 268 coppeted one, and then here's the Cooper Nickel original jacket on the bottom here.
yeah, so with the Hornady ones, yeah, so they remedied it by making the jacket thicker. And then they said somebody tested those out, and the issue they kept running into, and it was random. It could happen within like the first few rounds, or it could happen after 100 rounds, was I guess they experienced issues with what they thought was the bullet as it was going into the gain twist rifle. As the rifling was speeding up, the bullet would actually slow down because of that increased twist. And that slowing down of the bullet would allow pressure to really jack up. And they had a lot of Carcanos lock up and overpressure with those bullets. So that's the caveat there. Don't use the Hornady 268. They literally say 6.5 Carcano. They don't say 6.5 millimeter like all the other ones they made.
I think this is a good time to give a quick, a quick shout out to somebody who loaded me some 268 Carcano, even though it says 264 on the box here. Here we go. We can see. Yep. There we go. Milsurp munitions. They're 6.5 Carcano. Here's a round of the 268 loaded. If you can make that out, it's pretty good. Pretty good stuff. Just a little shout out there. He does make 264 and 268. So.
And I will say that
not use in Vetterli.
Yeah, do not use in Vetterli. I will say that this is not a unique problem to the Italian cartridge. The reason why it's so well known is because, as we discussed, the Italians did not ever officially fully adopt a fully jacketed Spitzer bullet. So they kept that torpedo and expanding base design, but all of the original non-fully metal jacket bullets do the same thing. So the Gewehr 88s, the M95s, the 8x50R does the same thing. It was never a fully Spitzer bullet. So they were all designed to be a loose base or whatever, so that the base would expand into the rifling. So it's just that the Carcano got kind of a bad luck of the draw, I guess, because they never fully adopted the Spitzer bullet. So it becomes well known, but really this is a problem that you deal with all of these style of bullets before you get to the full metal jacket Spitzers. So it's just like an unfortunate circumstance that it kind of gets the bad reputation.
Yeah, we have two issues really with Carcanos in the US. First is lack of ammo. The finding 264 is difficult, but also the line of sight is different in Italian guns, so that didn't help either. So we'll talk about it in just a moment. Coming back to Hornady, Hornady is 268 is probably one of the reasons there's some talk about tight bore, and to me tight bore is sort of a puzzler because they're bores. They all got checked. They all had standards. You won't go with strange tolerances. They all had the go no go treatment.
Yeah.
So there are not really tight bores from the factory. There are standard bores from the factory.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant when I said tight bore. I more meant like factory new bore that hasn't been shot, because at this point these guns are up to 130 something years old. They're not going to be in the same condition as when they came out of the factory. They've been shot thousands and thousands of times, probably. So the bores are not going to be the same exact diameter. They're going to be worn out a bit. So when I said tight bore, I really meant something that just hasn't been worn out at all. It's more of original spec.
I wanted to address this because this is part of the technical FUD lore where Italians, they don't know how to build a gun. They went cheap. They went extra cheap. They don't have tolerances. They have shitty tolerances. They have whatever. They have awful heat treatment. They just tons of FUD lore to justify cultural biases, I could say.
Yeah.
Wait, you mean that's not true?
No, it's not true, of course. We had standards, we had pretty strict standards, and when the Italian kingdom started asking for private companies to produce guns, they had abysmal numbers of refusal because they had standards. They had pretty tight standards of manufacturing. They had to be within 0.05 millimeters of tolerances, like 1/10, 1/12 of millimeters of tolerances. They had pretty tight tolerances, and they all had to be interchangeable. They all had to be part interchangeable, bolt interchangeable. So they randomly tested the guns because you can't test all the guns, but they had random tests with just from this batch I'll take 100 guns. If they all shoot right, all are interchangeable parts, all are within tolerances, the batch is good to go. If you find one gun that doesn't work, it's bad. But we test some other and we'll see. If you find two guns, the batch is on the verge of refusal. If you find 3 guns that doesn't work, the whole batch of 1,000, 10,000 guns just got refused, just got sent back to the production lines and rebuilt completely. So yeah, the standard of production were pretty tight. You don't want to. One thing you have to understand about the Italian production is yes, we don't have much money. We don't have huge raw materials. We don't have access to tons of things. And that's exactly why you want to have the best guns you can have for that cheap. You want your guns to be working for a long time, working for decades, and they work for decades. And you want your guns to be as effective as possible for as long as possible. And so that's why if you are a country with a cheap military budget, you want your guns to work fine as much as possible. And so that's why the tolerance, the heat treatment is all absolutely FUD lore. It's all absolutely cultural bias, we can say.
Well, I mean,
what was the lifespan of a barrel? Is it like 4,000 cartridges, roughly?
Yeah, that's one of the sort of it. It's not really 4,000. It's 4,000 plus 1,000 about, because after 4,000 rounds, it was bad, but it wasn't a refusal. One of the tests that were made on batches of rifles, they took one rifle out of 10,000 from that batch. They just took a single rifle out of 10,000, and they just shot the hell out of it, 4,000 rounds for I think days of shooting, because you shoot 4,000 rounds out of a single gun. So they shot the hell out of it, and if the barrel was still serviceable, the batch was approved. If the barrel wasn't serviceable, the whole batch was refused. So they were pretty tight about that. Yeah. And so 4,000 rounds, and to still be serviceable, barely, but still serviceable. And so So I will say that a real barrel rifle life will be 5,000 rounds, about 5,000 rounds of constant shooting without taking into consideration corrosion, of course. And all Italian bullets were had corrosive primers. So
Yeah. 4,000 rounds back to back shooting is much harder than 4,000 rounds over a lifespan. So, yeah.
because
Well,
of course,
and
One quick
you'll
thing
see-
that you mentioned that I realized I didn't talk about before. You did say the interchangeability of parts with the Carcanos. Didn't mention that about the Vetterlis. Originally, they were not interchangeable parts, but by about the late 1870s, by like starting in about 1877 for Torino, they were interchangeable parts. And by the end of production, the Vetterlis were interchangeable parts, but the early ones were not, which is why it can be a little bit difficult swapping parts out on those rifles. But,
Did they number them?
do they number
The parts? Yeah.
Nope. They the only serial numbers on the Vetterlis were on the barrel and the stock. Everything else was just barrel acceptance marks and.
I love hand-fit rifles that aren't numbered.
I know there's nothing to sit there and get all fussy about. I like it.
Yeah, with Carcano,
Why does my M95 suck so much? Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, I know. And you can never say it's original, too, on an
Yep.
M95. This is the
Or
original
any of
bolt.
these, if they
Are you
don't-
sure about that, bud?
You were asking about costs earlier, and it looks like Italy did pay a one-time royalty fee to Mannlicher for the design of their metal M block system. It was 300,000 lira, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is about $1.25 million USD in 2015, which is far less expensive than designing an entirely new system. So I imagine it was a very cost-effective approach.
And like he said, they were allies at the time, so it probably makes sense that they would be cool with doing that as well. Because that is a...
that was in 1891, so...
It was.
And they already had the idea of a packet loading from the Vetterli design, from the Vitali. So they already had the idea in their heads of like, oh, well, just it's a very... So that's the thing we talked about too before as well, is that they wouldn't have to retrain their soldiers how to insert cartridges because they've already been doing it the same way. So it's a very similar process.
Yeah.
So,
and the good thing about the way the Italians did it is that it goes both ways. It's bi-directional.
Bi-directional.
So they have they're bi. So
it's really good.
Unlike the Mannlicher, M95.
So let's really get into the weeds here. How many official variations of the Carcano exist?
Well,
30?
no.
Well,
yes, sort of.
Before we got into it, I was just gonna say, like, because it's overall the same action magazine, it's really barrel length, caliber, sights,
right?
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of them, and I don't know if we could like speed run like a timetable of the changes and why, but effectively from 1891 till 1945, it's the same exact action and magazine, correct?
Absolutely, yes. You can interchange a 1892 bolt into a 1944 rifle without theoretically any issue. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's completely the action itself, the magazine, the receiver, the bolt. It's completely interchangeable within all the guns.
Okay.
But yes, you basically take when they adopted the Carcano in 1892, they just started production, started seeing the flows, wanted to see the flows of production, wanted to see the the difficulties, and after that they started looking into the variations, because as we saw with since the 1867 conversion, Carcano conversion, we had the cavalry, we had the artillery, we had the bridge builders, we had all kind of carabinieri, we had all kind of troops with special needs. So with the Vetterli, they simplified it with the Chile for the infantry or whoever was on the front lines, the Truppe Speciali, that was the not what Fucile, Cavalleria, that was the cavalry carbine, that was for cavalry units, literally cavalry units, and someone else, special mobile units, but not the Bersaglieri, for example. The Bersaglieri went with the standard infantry rifle, standard fucile, and then you had the engineers, the artillery crews, the bridge builders. They all got condensed into the Truppe Speciali, the special troops that you call troop special sometimes, and carbine. So Moschetto da Truppe Speciali was the condensed rifle for the troops with special needs, like bridge builders, artillery, engineers, whoever who would need a small carbine that wasn't the cavalry carbine. And then you had the carabinieri that wanted a larger cavalry carbine. For the Carcanos, they went with an even simpler way. The cavalry carbine was good for all mobile units, the cavalry, then there arrived the bicycle units, then there arrived the carabinieri. Everyone who was sort of mobile, sort of in need of a small compact carbine went with cavalry, and then you have the Truppe Speciali directly from the Vetterli Truppe Speciali that went with the artillery crews, machine gun crews, bridge builders, engineers, whoever didn't need the compact carbine with the small, nice folding bayonet I have behind you. So basically, we have in 1893 the cavalry carbine. In 1897 they started producing the Truppe Speciali, but for the first period, that's about it. You have the long rifle, the cavalry carbine with folding bayonet, and the special troops that was just a compact rifle. And so 3 main variants, and that lasted until the 1920s, until after World War One, basically. Then you have some smaller variations, but that's another topic.
We'll speed run those real fast, right? So the 91, 24, 28,
Yeah.
38.
So, yeah. Do you want to talk about them, or do you want to?
Well, yeah. Just real fast. Just go through real quick, so we have an idea of where we're at.
So, but basically, during the First World War, the Truppe Speciali that yes, carbines. I will never pronounce it correctly.
It's there's not a correct way. It's whoever is decided that is correct.
How do you pronounce it?
I say carbine or carbine.
Carbine.
Yes,
Danny says carbine. I say carbine.
Carbine. The PS carbines were not ideal for actual combat. So they weren't really appreciated because they used the rifle sling that is as cheap as simple as you can get, and it's not really good to put it around your body if you're around your shoulders if you're everything bigger than 5 foot, sort of higher than 5 foot. So the artillery expressly requested that the TS carbines should have the side link swivels of the cavalry carbines to get strapped on correctly, and so And the TS is one of the carbine. Is one of the rifles that got the most differences, the most evolutions, because they had really, really good use in the fields. And so after the First World War, they realized that the long infantry rifle, the 100, and well, it's quite long, and they realized that it wasn't really suitable for most of their actual needs. So they went on, as many other countries, looking for carbines, looking for something more compact for their troops, and but of course after the First World War, there weren't any money anywhere. Bankruptcy, it was debt upon debt with Americans for food, for everything. So the military budget was just non-existent, and they had to do something with the millions of rifles they had around, and they just went, "Oh, all right, we have millions of rifles that that are just taking dust in our warehouses. We can take them and just shorten them and make new TS carbines. Just taking the long rifle and cutting it up." There were several iterations, but yeah, at the end they found the best way to cut them down, and that was the Moschetto Modello 9124. It's not a TS officially, but it covers all TS uses and purposes. So yeah, and then you have the 9128. That is not really the 9128 by any mean, but it was just a brand new production of TS carbines with some got the 28, the tromboncino modello 1928, the grenade launcher, the side-mounted grenade launcher, and yeah, that was quite a trip, and I'm working on it right now. It's a complicated story, but it's a really nice one. Do I have to go into deep about this?
A grenade launcher on a carbine?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you can show the picture, but
They're very small. Does
Yeah,
anybody have a 9128 or a 91?
I don't really
handy?
have it here.
No, okay. Because
wait.
I'm looking at these pictures of them. They're not big. They're very little.
They're very little. They are very.
And putting a grenade launcher on a rifle like that, that seems like that would be a tremendous. Oh, he has one.
Yeah, he has.
Oh yeah, so it's a little bitty thing.
Yeah, and they mounted it in front of the magazine, so you have to understand that it was really tight, really small.
So a tiny grenade.
Yeah, it was a tiny grenade launcher, and it shows a 40 millimeter grenade.
40 millimeter grenade?
40 millimeter, yes. 39, 38, but it was basically here. Have a picture, actually. I don't know if you can see it well enough.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's like an underbarrel grenade launcher.
It's side mounted.
Yeah, side mounted.
Oh, side mounted. Okay.
Yeah. It's complicated to show it, but it's
yeah.
It's it was a nice idea to get artillery support during ambushes, during movement, during whatever, during infantry squad actions, or just during motorized raids, because in the 1920s, Italy was involved in Libya and on the Ethiopian border to crush rebellions and to take a better hold of the territory they were controlling in North Africa and East Africa. So motorized columns were a thing, and they definitely needed a combat rifle, a combat carbine, and with artillery. And when artillery support wasn't there, they needed something to offer covering fire, offer suppressive fire in a short and compact way. And the Tromboncino Modello 28 is not the best realization because the requirements were bad. Because the requirements basically were, oh yes, you need a separate barrel, so you can shoot the carbine whenever you don't use the grenade launcher. The grenade launcher needs to fire the same bullet that the carbine shoots. So the standard, not a special bullet, not a blank bullet, just the regular ball bullets that the carbine shoots, and it needs to be to shoot with the same action of the carbine, not with a completely separate action.
Okay. It didn't have a separate trigger or anything like that.
The requirements were bad, and the realization was as good as it could be. It was nice overall, but the accuracy was terrible. The practical range was terrible. The explosive charge was terrible. It wasn't really the best solution, and in fact, it was ditched quite soon. Within 1950, it was adopted in 1928 and ditched in 1935. Just 7 years of production, just the time to make a couple manuals, to make a couple big maneuvers, training maneuvers, and realized maybe it wasn't the best idea, and we'll just go with a light mortar that will become the Brixia model 35. We will go with a squad with it. So the infantry squad has heavy machine guns, light mortars, heavy mortars, so you can advance without issues, without the need of heavy artillery. But the Tromboncino was ditched because it wasn't a good idea.
The design of it to use the same cartridge as the regular rifle was pretty neat. That's a pretty neat thing that it catches the bullet right as it comes out of the case neck and then just allows the burning powder to shoot the grenade, and then the just
this is once again the theme of this of their whole style is frugality, is what we're talking about here, and not in terms of a negative, in terms of like we need to use everything we have to the fullest extent. We're not going to do something special because that would just make it more complicated. So let's talk about the 735.
Yeah.
We want to before we get to the 735. I know we kind of started off on a timeline thing here, but I guess we're kind of now getting towards World War II. But before we do that,
well, yeah, we're getting there.
World War I.
Oh, that's right. We forgot.
Oh boy! How could we forget that? Which we did. We did talk about that in length in a previous episode.
Sorry.
But just real quick, during World War I,
take your time.
Still had what?
Take your time. Just,
you've got your time here for your exploding rifles.
By the time World War I was coming up, Italy still had about 1.2 million of these of their Vetterlis left out of the 1.6 they originally made. By then, these were all pretty much the 7087 models with the 4-round magazines, and then chambered for the 10.4 millimeter smokeless round. And in preparation for the First World War, because they started doing this before they had even declared war, Austria-Hungary. So this was not a reactive move to where they realized suddenly that they needed rifles. They knew they were going to need them. They adopted this before they even started the war. So they were smart to do that. They adopted, currently, everyone says 400,000. The other sources say up to 700,000, which I actually think is more likely because these are very common compared to the 7087s. If you just look at the ratio of how many of these you see for every 10.4 millimeter one, it definitely seems like they made a lot more than 400,000 of them.
Diego, did you have something to say?
No, just it wasn't adopted immediately before the war, but was proposed before the war. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was proposed, and I think they accepted the conversion pattern like right around the same time.
Yeah,
But they were definitely working on this before the war started. So
absolutely.
they took those Vetterlis and they got rid of the magazine, swapped in, a Monmouthshire magazine here. Essentially, it's just the same one from the Carcano. They just cut off, the trigger guard, and fill in some of the holes on the side of the magazine where the Vitali magazine used to be, because it was a lot thicker. So they filled that in with some wood plugs, and then they made some more modifications to the bolt by drilling out the center of it to allow it to function with the rimless cartridge like 6.5 Carcano. Though they also, apparently reasonably significant numbers, they seem to have just chopped off the fronts of the bolt and pinned a new bolt head on. And I have one in a bag somewhere where it was actually loose. I was able to drive the pin out and pull the new bolt head off. That's something that's not in the Vetterli book. In fact, it's nowhere. I don't think anyone really knew about it until I managed to get one that was actually loose enough for me to take it apart, because most of the times you can't see the pin because these things are so old. They're just so patinaed, you don't even notice that it's there. But they made some modifications to the bolt to allow it to work with the 6.5 cartridge. They lined the barrels using the Salerno method, where they would bore out the original rifling with steps, put a liner into it that had matching steps, so that way it couldn't slide out the front. And then they would put steel rods, hardened steel rods, and force those through, which would swage it into the original barrel. They are not soldered. They don't get hot and fall out. That's it's a piece of lore. I don't know where that came from. If anything, you maybe had one that came loose and somebody soldered it back in, and then later on somebody else had it come loose and they thought that was the way it was originally done. It was not. So they also resighted them, obviously, with new sights, going out to 2,000 meters all the way up at the top. And yeah, they use these as rear line rifles to free up Carcanos for the front line during World War I. And these get used quite a bit, as the lines shifted in the First World War. But then mostly, probably where they're more significantly known is they sent a lot of these to Ethiopia in the 1935 and 1936 Second War with Ethiopia. And these got used in the colonies there for a while after. So, at the time, these were, up to like 45 years old rifles. So these things were pulled out of storage and updated for the First World War. And that was pretty much the last modification for the Vetterli.
Yeah, that's one of my
Really
favorite
neat
jokes, because that's got an AOI stamp on it.
This one does, yeah. So,
How do you pronounce that again?
Africa Orientale Italiana.
Africa Orientale Italiana, yes.
Yeah, I don't say it as fast.
Well, you said riparazione, very good. So
Okay.
you're getting it.
That for those that don't know, that AOI stamp is the mark of any rifle that was sent to the colonies. That what they just said, that phrase there, is their term for the
Italian East Africa.
Italian East Africa.
Now there was another term before that one. It has a different stamp. I saw it once or twice on an Italian Vetterli.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was.
But
there was sometimes it appears like REC, RE, like
REI?
RE, Red Esercito Coloniale. We don't really know if it's Red Esercito or Red Esercito Coloniale. body looks like it. With
Like, it
gun
lines
through the
up.
colonies. Yeah. What?
It lines up with the idea, right?
Yeah.
It's like AOI is the official one that we know for sure existed, but there's a possibility before AOI, because I've seen one with that other stamp and with an AOI stamp over the top of it. So it was like
Yes, because as Herzog, the AOI wasn't really a thing until after the conquest of Ethiopia. So after the conquest of Ethiopia, it officially became the Italian East Africa, and then it was stamped all over the properties.
Yeah, and that was so they could keep track of the weapons in case any of them got disappeared.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why you see them so often still, is because that's stamped deep into the wood. So those are very heavy stamped.
There's no getting that off unless you do this.
There's
completely destroy and try to scrape away.
Why'd you do that?
I blame whoever did this. In Ethiopia. See,
I will
That's
say
somebody
this,
that was upset.
yes, clearly.
Some Ethiopian surely was going to erase it somehow. Yes, of course.
That's somebody that was personally affected by Italian occupation of Ethiopia.
Yeah. It wasn't good at all.
No. But
so
it's pretty
you
much
saw as
Vetterli's.
what were you going to say?
I just said that's pretty much it.
Never mind. Go ahead.
Okay. Is that pretty much it for the Vetterlis then? The
Yes.
last hurrah?
They're fun to shoot. The 6.5 ones are really fun to shoot.
Yeah.
Just
Great plinkers.
Super fun plinkers.
Make sure you use full power loads, everybody. That's an official stamp of Milsurp World, is that you use full power load, max load possible in
I don't know, man.
Vetterli.
I used 120% load and I was fine. So I mean, you know what? Double charge it. No, don't do that.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, Vetterli is converted. Vetterli is converted to 6.5 during the First World War, and during the colonial wars. It's good because you have a decent supply line, decent armories, decent constant check, constant inspections, constant everything. You have these guns inspected every once in a while. So if they go out of spec with the standard ammunition, they just went to the armories and just repaired. But after 80 years of unchecked use and abuse and commercial market and hot loads and whatever, and Hornady 268, you want to check and inspect your brand new Vetterli 16 that you get. And don't use Hornady 268 on Vetterli, please. Don't.
Yeah, they're good with the 264s.
Yeah,
they're pretty.
I want to see you shoot a 268 Hornady in one of the RTI Vetterlis.
I did. I just haven't put that video together. When I went out and did torture testing on one of them.
You did the 268, the Hornady 268?
Yeah, I did the Hornady 268 with a reduced. So here's the funny thing. The rifle ran okay with overcharges of, I was using BLC2. Like I did 110% fine, 120% charge of BLC2, fine. But I did a 90%, like a reduced load with the Hornady 268, and it created so much back pressure. When it blew through the primer, it blew the extractor out. The extractor broke and came bent way out. So those Hornadies cause a lot of pressure, and that's with a reduced load, not going at a full power load. And I think that kind of proves a little bit that putting that oversized slug into that gain twist rifling doesn't seem to be good. They seem to slow down and cause a lot of back pressure, because if a 90% load with that bullet was enough to blow that extractor out, whereas 120% load was fine. It seems that there's a big issue with those bullets, but yeah, I haven't blown one up yet. I I got to edit a bunch of footage for the first torture test. I'm just being lazy, and then I'm going to do a second torture test because I'm going to get one to blow up. I just haven't done it. Probably going to have to go up to 130%, maybe 140% load. I mean, it's going to be really hot stuff I'm going to put in there, but for shooting them with reduced power load 264s, it's not really an issue. I've shot 17 ones now, most of which came from RTI. Never had a problem.
See, that's going to spark a bit of controversy because haven't you seen them? Haven't you seen? Didn't you get the link?
I'll send you a link
to that video more times than I can count.
Yeah, you never heard
jumping
anything
into the
definitive.
735.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get out of this one.
Yeah, because we're about 2 hours in there, so
Yeah.
let's get into the 735s.
Yeah. So we had several. Going back to the ammunition, we have several specialty ammunition for the Carcanos. We have the blanks. We have the frangible, the frangibili that just disintegrate in smaller ranges indoors. And we have the mitraglia that was the buckshot ammunition. We have several specialty ammunition, and but turning back to the 735, after the First World War, we actually tried both the Spitzer bullet with the 6.5 Spitzer bullet. We tried to take something out of it, like the Swedish did in the 1940s, but we didn't really want to stay with the small bore bullet. We wanted to go bigger. We wanted to go with a better terminal ballistic. We wanted to make damages to bodies. We realized that the 6.5 was good to penetrate things, was good to stop marching column, was good for several things, was precise, was good, but it wasn't really. It didn't really had stopping power. It didn't really make big damages to tissues, big damages to a single soldier. So we wanted to go bigger. Ideally, we wanted to go to an 8mm bullet, but we really needed to stay cheap again. And one of the requirements for the new 735 was to be recycled. It had to be in the same dimension, to be hosted in the clips, to be hosted in the chambers, to be hosted in whatever these bullets were. So we really wanted the 735 that I have here.
Going back to a culture of frugality and reusing what you can.
Yeah. Like you wanted, the requirements were to reuse everything that was already into service. Like we adopted the light machine gun, the Breda Modello 30, the Model 30 Breda, the light machine gun, the fucile automatico, the automatic rifle, and they wanted these bullets to be in the same chambers, same clips, same everything. But they wanted to have a bigger diameter bullet to cause more tissue damage, basically.
And to switch to Spitzer, it seems.
Yeah, of course, yeah. They went to...
Yeah, the switch to Spitzer is kind of necessary when you go to the larger diameter bullets. You can kind of get away with it, not doing it with a small diameter like 6.5, but yeah.
Yeah, it was...
So what came first? Was it the...
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, this also says that they most likely copied this from a British 303 bullet design, but the tips of the 735s were filled with aluminum.
Yeah.
So that they would produce a very unstable projectile upon impact to do the most amount of soft tissue damage as possible.
Yes, absolutely. And we had two issues. We needed to get these to every single soldier with their rifles and the infantry squad light machine gun. But we also needed another round for the heavy machine guns. That became, of course, the 8x59 Breda that it was quite bigger, and we tried to use the British 303 because our Air Force was already using the 303, was already in our supply chains, was already produced by our factories, because our airplanes basically used 303.
Already seeing a logistical nightmare here because so now you have 6.5, now you have 7.35 that you're introducing. You have an 8 point what?
59.
8 by 59.
Yeah, breed a machine gun round
And then you're doing 303
for airplanes.
And then I also know they made 8 by 50R for the East Africa colonies as well.
Well, yeah, we had tons of after the First World War, we had hundreds of thousands of Austrian rifles and Austrians heavy machine guns, the Schwarzlose, just captured just
It was reparations they were given as part of payment because Austria
reparation.
couldn't pay, so they gave them tons of rifles as payments.
Yeah.
And then those ended up in Africa, so you had to supply chain those as well.
Yeah,
that's
that was
a nightmare.
Yeah, that was sort of an afterthought because, well, you send them to Africa, you aren't just the colonial troops, and, well, 8 by 50 just goes to Africa. It doesn't matter to the bigger troops, for the bigger formations.
But it's still another thing that takes up resources to produce, and it's another caliber in your supply chain. You're already at 4 for the major usages, and then we're adding a 5th for a minor usage, and then you have obviously pistol calibers for submachine guns and stuff like that. So,
yeah, not the best one. So that's why they wanted the 6.5. The 6.5 just replaced entirely by the 735, just to ease the
yeah, that makes more sense because you would just, if you just replace it entirely, then it would just eliminate an entire supply chain issue.
Yeah. And yeah, the 8 by 59 was adopted for heavy machine guns, just for heavy machine guns to pack a better punch miles away. The 303 was taken into consideration but was refused because they wanted something more performative, something more modern. The 303 was already, I think it was already sort of obsolete for the First World War. I seem to recall something like that.
It's a rimmed cartridge.
They don't want to. Yeah, they don't want a rimmed cartridge.
It's not ideal. It was already old, so they wanted something new, something modern, something efficient. And yeah, that's another folklore about Italy. That's yes, we had no money for anything. Yeah, but in 1935 we just adopted, between 1935 and 1938 we adopted like everything new heavy machine guns, new mortars, new light mortars, new rifles, and yeah, when
did Mussolini come to power?
1922.
Okay, so
October 28th.
He had a long time period to get this going in terms of, because that was his vision too, was to increase Italian influence. So like that's he pushed hard for the Italian the Africa colonies too, right?
Yeah, one thing you have to understand about Mussolini is that while Hitler is, in my humble opinion, a lunatic, Mussolini is a classical politician. It's just where the wind goes, I go with it.
Yes.
I want this country to be strong, yes, but I'm not crazy for it. I'm just trying to build an image for Italy, for the Italians to conform. It's not I'm going to believe these to my
right. It's not he's not the new Roman emperor.
Yeah, he was just a politician. He wanted to stay in power, and he did his best to stay in power. It wasn't really. It mostly was just propaganda. It was just there to impress. So yeah, he wanted to stabilize the colonies for sure, and the Ethiopian War was actually the best moment for him. 1936 was absolutely the apex of fascist appreciation between the population. Like he rose to power in 1922. He stabilized the government around 1924, 1926. But in 1935, with the Ethiopian War and everything with and everything that went with it, he just met the popularity apex. The war really makes you re-elected.
Yeah.
The mantras.
Made him popular. Made him more
Yeah.
popular.
Yeah, we have a saying about wartime presidents like that. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So sorry, not to get sidetracked again, because like we're getting on the time here. So 735 designed to come in, simplify everything. We're going to switch everything to 735. Is it? So it comes in 1938. Is it the start of the war that kind of throws us all into hell, or is it just that they just kind of just fell flat in terms of production?
No, the production was good actually. This is the first model adopted. The production was good because for the 735, as we said, they just started converting all the long rifles. This is a First World War receiver, First World War barrel, First World War. No, this is Second World War. Sorry. But yes, it's everything you had from the First World War. You can recycle except the stock and make a brand new rifle. Because the 6.5 barrel, you just drill it, make a new rifle in it, and you're good to use the 735 without any issue. So it was a really well thought conversion.
Yeah, it seems like a really well thought out idea. It just didn't go through.
Yeah, it was a wonderful idea actually. It was well designed. This barrel is about 535 millimeters. I don't recall the exact, but about 50 centimeters. And it's perfect for the new 735. The loading is meant to be perfect in this length of barrel. It's perfect to cycle the automatic, the light machine gun. It's really a well thought conversion, and they spent a lot of time to develop it just because it was good. But yeah, the Hitler time frame wasn't as good as ours. Like at the same time that we adopted the 735, we adopted the new rifle, the Model 38. We also started the trials to get a brand new semi-automatic rifle, and there were many competitors. There were Beretta, there were Scotti, there were the Armaguerra, there were several. There were the Arsenals that came with their own semi-automatic rifle, and it was chosen. The Armaguerra was chosen as the standard semi-automatic rifle for the Italian infantry squad, and Armaguerra started building a factory to build the new semi-automatic rifles that were ordered in the tens of thousands, and then Hitler declared war to Poland, and it all went down the drain completely.
Yeah.
Because,
I mean, we see it happen. We saw it happen with the British. They were ready to start the P-13, the P-13 production and replacement of the SMLE, and then that just disappeared because you're not going to do that in the middle of a war because that makes no sense. So, but they had already ramped up production of the 38 by this point. So, what do you do with them? I believe they mostly go to Finland.
Yeah, it's complicated because they already made about 300,000 rifles. Then you also have the carbines, and because they were converting everything they could to get the army completely equipped with the 735 guns, and just the war happened, and then they say, "Oh, we have to get into the war as quick as possible." So by January 1940, they started to put in the strings and saying that they were not going to get the 735, they were going back to 6.5. So they just put all the 735 guns, put it into training, put it into paramilitary associations, put it into everyone else that wasn't on the front lines, on the supply chains. And Finland was one of the best buyers of Italian stuff. They bought airplanes, they bought helmets, they bought equipment, whatever. Finland was absolutely in need of guns for fighting the Soviets, so they got everything they could. And Italy say, "Oh, we got several hundred thousands of rifles. Do you want them?" And they say, "Yes, but only about 100,000." So 100,000 guns were sold to Finland. 95,000 actually got to Finland, but with due time, because the Germans were allied with the Soviets at the time, where there was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact.
Non-aggression, yeah.
Yeah, and they didn't want to look bad to the Soviets, so they held all the Italian shipments directed to Finland, and they just waited for the Winter War to end before letting the train passing. And so 95,000 of these rifles in 735 arrived to Finland. There are two iterations of this. There is this iteration, there is the classic Model 38 you see around, and there is the first one that I showed you before, and without you see the different front end.
Ah, okay.
This one was made in just 30,000, about 40,000. But these didn't end up in Finland, apparently. So you just see this one from Finland.
Say, for people who can't see the video, it's the main difference is that front band has been extended from one slot to two screws for extra support, right?
Sort of, yes. Longer handguard and longer handguard.
Oh,
And
because there's a full
And the
handguard
barrel
on the first
band.
variant.
Yeah,
The
the
barrel
first one
band,
has a full
yes.
handguard. Yeah, so they made it shorter.
Also, there was a shorter sling swivel just to have the sling more comfortable for everyone. But that's it. So Finland got 95,000 of these, and as Ian told pretty frequently, they kind of hated it. Can't argue with it because the first batch of 735 ammo hit, and if you're good with sights, these aren't the best sharpshooting rifles around. That's it. But it's a good rifle. It's sturdy, reliable, simple to use. It's a very good rifle.
Yeah,
So one
V-sight.
almost one. Go ahead.
No, go. I just said it was a fixed V-sight. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the fixed sights, the economic decisions, and the practical reason to do that.
I have to know. Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
tell us a little bit about the sight development and why they made that decision.
So, basically, these had to be the standard infantry rifle for the standard infantry squad. All had to be armed with these, except about 3 or 4 members of the squad that had to be the semi-automatic rifle. And the semi-automatic rifle, the Armaguerra Modello 39, the Model 39 semi-automatic, had adjustable sights, had really good sights, and that was to be the marksman rifle. This was to be the standard Grant, you say?
Yeah.
Grant? Yeah, standard Grant rifle. You just equip everyone with these on the front lines, and they just offer covering fire for the light machine guns. the Italian infantry squad was based around the light machine gun, sort of like the Germans, sort of like the British. So they had the two Breda 30s light machine guns for every infantry squad, with everyone else armed with these, basically. And 3 or 4 semi-automatic rifles to offer marksman support for the infantry squad. And so that wasn't really useful. It wasn't really needed for the standard infantryman to use adjustable sights. It was just good to offer covering fire. You just need this covering fire. You're going to offer covering fire just up to 300 meters, not much else. So you just give them this. They just line it up. These are zeros for 200 meters. So you just line it up, shoot, offer covering fire for the light machine gun while it moves, and that's basically
It's smart too. That's smart.
Yeah,
it's cheap, effective, it works. Everyone can use it. Everyone can use it fast. Everyone can use it well. And that's one of the main differences between the older guns, because this one you just line completely the front sight with the rear sight, while in the old ones you have to dig the front sight into at the bottom of the pinot. Sorry, British.
yeah.
There's a little bit. I know Ian McCollum's talked about this, but there's a little bit of FUD lore with the development of this rifle, and then later the 9141, the Armagueras that you were talking about, and he was saying that people will say, oh, this was the longer 9141s were developed because the 38s were too short and there was a military demand for a longer rifle. You were saying they really just developed the 9141 because the factory was already there and they were already geared up for production, correct?
It's sort of complicated and sort of simple at the same time. So it's So in January 1940, the 735 project was completely ditched, was completely discarded, and they just went back into the production of 6.5 guns, and just the 735 lines of production just switched to the 6.5, basically. So you have the Model 38 rifle in 6.5. But while the 735 bullet was perfect for this barrel wasn't as good to exploit the 6.5 bullets. And so in 1940, two things happened. The 735 was completely ditched, but we also realized that we couldn't afford at all the marksman rifle, the semi-automatic marksman rifle, the Armaguerra Modello 39, and at the same time, the Armaguerra factory was built, and they just went, oh, we just built a huge factory to produce hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of semi-automatic rifles, and you just broke the contract for this. And the government was like, we need to find something
to do with this factory.
Yeah, but also
a compromise.
Yes, but also to avoid a legal
lawsuit.
issue, legal lawsuit, because they were promised millions to build this factory and to build hundreds of thousands of rifles, and they weren't anymore. And so, but also there wasn't any more money for the semi-automatic rifle. But they also needed a marksman rifle for the infantry squad. So they went back into the drawing table and they just tried to find a decent solution. So cutting it short, there was an intermediate model that was the Model 1940. The Model 1940 was basically this. This one is the Model 1941. The Model 40 was this exact rifle, just with the sights with the rear sights of the Armaguerra Modello 39. So the Armaguerra Modello 39 had a specific rear sight with, how do you call it, a dial sight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, like the Ljungman, like the Swedish AG42,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a dial
Yeah.
sight here. And so they just took the Armaguerra concept of the Armaguerra concept and put it into a Carcano with a decent barrel length to exploit the 6.5 efficiently. And they just say, "Oh, this is good," but at the same time they say, "Well, we can just we got rid of the Armaguerra Modello 39. We can get rid also of the rear side." So they adopted the fucile modello 1941, the 41 rifle with a sort of regular sight, but it's also not regular because this is proprietary. Do you say proprietary?
Yeah,
Yeah.
proprietary.
Yeah.
This is proprietary for this gun. It's really, really similar to the other Mosquetos, but it's mounted slightly differently, and it's not really the same. So they went with a proprietary rear sight anyway, and this is the Model 41. This is the really last Carcano developed decently during World War II. And this was just to equip the infantry squad with a decent marksman rifle to basically take over the Armaguerra project and to exploit the 6.5 at longer distances. And they were fighting at longer distances because Italy fought on Greek mountains, on deserts of North Africa, and on the vast plains of Russia. So it was quite good to have a rifle with rear sights, with decent rear sights, decent range, decent everything. The 735 is really good. Don't get me wrong, it's really good. But yeah, out of the 6.5, out of the Model 38, it's good, but you have to enter into the mind of all generals that are going to see, this one doesn't perform well at 200,000 meters. I want this to perform at 2,000 meters or so on. I want it to exploit
And you have fixed
the
rear
6.5.
sight too, so you don't have the ability to shoot long range.
It's more like a ballistic requirement more than a tactic requirement or a real requirement. But it's sort of like that.
So that's the last hurrah of the Carcano.
Yes. It's a bit more complicated than this, but we tried
Obviously.
to.
I know it's just like a straight up overview. Real fast, because this I do know this does show up occasionally, and people get this confused too. There are 8mm conversions done by the Germans, and then also done by Italy post-war in an attempt to market to the Middle East.
Yeah, I think there was a specific request from the Middle East actually to get cheap guns in 8x50, 57, and the Italian government say, "Oh yes, we can give it to you because we actually had a project like that during the Second World War, so they just did their best." So basically,
you'll find that it looks like you can find all of the 38's versions or the 41 in 8mm potentially.
Yeah,
Mosquetos too.
Yeah, it's basically
you can find a lot of them. Yeah,
the Germans.
Those little Mosquetos in 8mm, those things kick.
The Germans.
Yeah, they do kick.
The Germans, but the Germans at the end of 1944 started to ask around to the factories to convert the Carcanos to 8mm, and the factories went, "Oh yes, we can try it, no problem." The head stamp the base is sort of the same. We just need to file it up a little. We just need to drill the chamber, drill the barrel. Not a huge deal, but it was too little, too late. So just a couple thousand converted. And yes, they did it with the Model 41, 38, and with the Mosquito, with the cavalry carbines mostly. But after the Second World War, in the late 1940s, early 1950s, when supposedly Egypt asked for it, they made the cavalry carbine and the TS carbine into 8x57. You recognize it basically because they have two recoil lights plugged into the stock, the post-war conversions.
Okay, I was going to ask if there was a way to determine the between the two, so that's how you determine it.
Yeah, it's a bit complicated, but generally you have two recoil lugs. That's post-war conversion for the Arab market. So no, that's not a grandpa bring back from fighting the Germans to the nail.
Yeah. That's also there's some FUD lore here too. Is that the German conversions are dangerous, and that the Middle Eastern ones are not dangerous. So that's it's been around a while. It's not super common anymore to be said, but it does. People do show up sometimes when I've seen people post 8mm Carcanos and they'll be like, "Oh, don't shoot that."
I will say actually the opposite, because the Carcano action can withstand 8x57 without any issue. They can withstand 8x59 without any issue. They use the Carcano action to test extensively at the ammo factories the 8x59. That is quite a huge monster of a cartridge, and the Carcano action can withstand these without any bulge, but basically. But if I have to double check a Carcano in 8mm, I will double check the Egyptian, the Arab market, the post-war ones, because they had a bad life. They were abused. They were used for training. They were used for everything. It's not a matter of can it withstand 8x57. It's a matter of was it abused? Was it damaged during the service? Was it mistreated?
It's a similar situation with the Vetterlis.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
You're using a higher powered cartridge, but it's always just about how it was treated during its service life, and then it's just like anything else we do in this hobby, is that you need to inspect your stuff. If you don't trust yourself to do it, you need to find somebody that'll do it for you, and that's more difficult than people would think it is. But
I usually just go with whatever the old guy at the gun show tells me.
Yeah,
but it's also a good reminder that almost all military rifles are very overbuilt.
Yes.
A lot of people think if you even go like even near max loads with like modern reloading data, that you're doing something dangerous, or that any type of rechambering is like dangerous. I mean, military rifles of the bolt action rifles of that era are very solid.
With few exceptions, if it's a bolt action, it's mostly safe.
I had a guy blow up at me when I shot an 8mm out of my TS, and it was one of the Arab ones, and he was like, "Under no circumstances should you do this." I'm like, they would not have made this if it was unsafe.
I had a guy tell me I was shooting a 6.5 Vetterli, but I was shooting the one with the Carcano, and I had a guy tell me how the Carcanos, I forgot what year he said, but like after the 1930s, he said they were all made out of iron and they would just blow up when you shot them. So
iron, yeah. True.
He refused to acknowledge that he was wrong. I told him like, no, they were never made with iron.
No, it makes no sense. People have this logic that the countries that are trying to arm their soldiers are not going to arm them with something that's going to blow up. And like yeah, there are like situations where unintended consequences happen where you have a design flaw or something, but like the common one is the Arasaka blows up. That's not the case. The suicide pistol or whatever.
Oh yeah. Lots of good
Um,
FUD lore out there, and there's plenty. Yeah, there's plenty of FUD lore with Italian stuff.
Oh yeah, and that I think has to do with the sudden explosion of interest into Italy because of the assassination of JFK. That became a huge interest to a lot of people very quickly, and so you have tons of people buying these things just because it's the gun that shot JFK.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Anytime, yeah. That's
You can get the bullet that shot JFK. There's a guy that's got he's got some boxes of ammo from the same production lot that Oswald used to shoot Kennedy. So it's the same production lot from the factory of the 6.56.
supposedly.
No, it's got the same lot number or whatever as the ammo that he used. So he sells it for like $50 a round, and it's like it's from the same lot that killed Kennedy.
It's very weird, Diego.
Yeah, there's a big
It's
obsession
odd.
with Kennedy.
A friend of mine nearby here has the serial number before of one of Harry Oswald. So
he has the next serial number before.
Oh man.
Import that to the U.S. and sell that for like millions.
He could sell that for so much money in the U.S. money. That's so weird. It's such a weird obsession with JFK assassination.
My favorite part is that like they can't explain what happened, and so the official explanation is magic. We don't know how the bullet was undamaged after passing through multiple people and objects. It was magic.
Well, there is a lot of speculation to have about the JFK assassination, but sometimes when I read like, oh, the Carcano is cheat, you can shoot him, you can't shoot him in third second to cycle it. Like, yeah, it is a complicated situation, but it's not Carcano's fault. I see a lot of
Heresy World podcast, everyone.
Yeah, there was a lot of cultural bias about the Carcano can't possibly be.
Oh yeah.
It's not good enough to have done that. Yeah.
It should have exploded. It shouldn't have be
and
accurate
just
enough at 80 meters.
Just to also put this in perspective, I have the 6.5 by 52 Wikipedia page open. The first picture shown is a round from the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah, the magic bullet. That's the magic bullet.
No, it's an unfired cartridge.
Oh, okay.
So, but it is from the exhibit of the Kennedy assassination. So it's like this is what everybody in the U.S.
thinks of, knows about it,
knew about Carcanos for, I want to say, from the assassination until maybe into the 80s or 90s when maybe some of that information started to come in. But
I mean, I'll be honestly, when I'm shooting a Carcano or something, and somebody, normally an older person, asks what it is, I say it's a Carcano, they'll be confused, and every time I just say the Kennedy gun, and they go, "Oh, that gun." That's like that's how big it is. Like someone will recognize the Kennedy gun more than they'll recognize Carcano.
Yeah.
There was actually a movie that was Arakataka, I think. There was the conspiracy theories that say, "Oh, that's their Harry Oswald rifle," and it was a Springfield 1903, and they just went along with it. All right, something like that.
That's funny.
Yeah, weird.
Diego, I think before we wrap up, might be good to give maybe just a brief overview of the naming convention of the different manufacturers, like the Brescia region versus the Valtrumpia Valley, and some of the confusion between Meta Brescia, FNA Brescia, government versus private. That might be useful.
I'm gonna have to hop off here pretty soon, so I might.
Yeah, don't worry.
Just to set a record here on this one.
So we basically have several arsenals that made the long rifles in the first batches, and there was Terni, Torre Annunziata, Terni Pronunziata Brescia, Torino, and that's it. These are the first producing the long rifles. Then Brescia, the Brescia Arsenal, the Brescia State Arsenal, went on producing carbines, exclusively carbines. All the carbines before 1920 were made by Brescia, the Brescia Arsenal. And after that, Brescia was completely closed down because there were no work, there were no money, there were no more war to do for Brescia. So everything made after 1920 and that is marked Brescia is not made by the Brescia Arsenal. The Brescia Arsenal was closed down completely, abruptly, no more. If you see again marked after with a date after 1920, it's most likely, and it's marked Brescia after 1920. It's most likely an FNA Brescia gun. FNA is the Fabbrica Nazionale d'Armi, and is a private company that was in the town of Brescia, Italy, because Brescia is a town in Italy. Like, I guess Springfield is a town too. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes sense to say it, name it after the town is in.
Yeah, just the Brescia was Fabbrica Nazionale d'Armi. That was the company name, and then they put the name where they were. This is Brescia. That's it. And then
it was just a coincidence they have the same name.
Not so much of a coincidence, because Brescia, as James suggested, Brescia is at the center of the gun region of Italy. Around Brescia, you have the most famous gun manufacturers. You have Beretta, you have Luigi Franchi, you think about a brand in Italy, except Benelli, I think. Most of them will be in the Brescia region. And Beretta is in Gardone Valtrompia. You can call it Gardone Valtrompia. Is right. Pronunciation is terrible for us too, but it's Gardone Valtrompia. It is a small town in the middle of a valley, north of Brescia, and it's just where Beretta is, where Franchi is, where most of the gun manufacturers hang around. And so you'll see very often confusion with Brescia and FNA Brescia. And you also see a lot of confusion between the Gardone Valtrompia arsenal, because there was a production line at Gardone Valtrompia of a state arsenal. But also you have 200 yards away, you have the Beretta factory, the Beretta private factory, that will brand its own guns with Beretta, Gardone Valtrompia. You have a little confusion because it's the same exact town, but one is a private producer, one is a state arsenal. If you have no idea about gun production, it can be a little confusing. And of course, here in Italy is quite a problem too, because people don't know about this stuff. This is just industrial archaeology that I dig in, my cousin dig in, but not everyone. So you have a lot of Italian confused about the Brescia and FNI Brescia, and you'll also have a lot of confusion about Gardone Valtrompia and Beretta. Like, we have to register our firearms. I have 9138 Moschetto, and it's from Gardone Valtrompia, but it's registered as a Beretta gun.
But it's not.
It's not good. No. It's not ideal. It's not a well-known fact. It can be confusing. I tried my best to explain it on my website, but I know that it can be confusing, at least.
What is that website, just so we can get that out there to everybody?
Right. It's carcanorifle.weebly.com.
Okay, so that's carcanorifle.weebly.com.
That's it.
All right.
Before we wrap up, Diego, I need to ask you, how often do you think about the Roman Empire?
Well, not that much often. I really don't care. No. No, it's a fun piece of history, but I loved when the meme,
Meme.
Yeah, meme.
when the meme came out. I was like, because I follow tons of meme pages from Italy when, history came out, and I just oh, this is an Italian meme. Oh no, it's all over the internet. Oh no, everyone is thinking about the Roman Empire. Was like what? And it was a really fun meme.
There's an older meme too, and I don't know where this was from. It might have been the U.S., but there's pictures of people dressed up as Roman legionnaires shooting at MG42.
Yeah,
and I see that one get pasted around a bit. It's like when you've leveled up your civilization in Age of Empires.
It's a proto meme. That's a proto meme.
It's
that
an
was
old one.
before meme was a word.
Yeah, I don't remember where that's from, but that's always been funny to see those guys.
Yeah, it's a meme going around in free circles of mine, in the reenactment circles, in the Fallout New Vegas circle, because the Legion with heavy machine guns is good, and of course the historian circles and the video game circles in general is it's a recurring meme, of course.
That's nice.
It's nice.
All right.
Well, we did it, guys.
Finish it up though. Something Garand and BM59, but no one's really cares about those two rifles. I don't even know what they are. Those were the last two ones that, right? I'm not gonna spend any time on those.
Yeah, just
I've never even heard of them. What's a Garand?
We used the Carcano up until 1945 officially. Then we just put it in the real line, and we adopted both the Lee Enfield and the Garand at the same time. Yeah. And then we did definitely the Lee Enfield, stay with the Garand, and then we converted it to 308 through 762 NATO in the 1950s. And most of the Italian you'll meet that got drafted will have some experience with the M1 Garand up until the 1990s, because it was the standard rifle to train soldiers in 308, of course. Yeah. We converted the tons of M1 Garands to 308, but only about a couple. I don't know if we reached the 100,000 BM59 converted. I don't know. I think it's just tens of thousands. Not really to arm everybody, just the frontline units, just the best units. Again, just to treat budgets.
Yeah, I know a lot of people in the U.S. love the BM59. Every time I see one posted, they sing
nice
praises.
Like what, like $4,000 or however much they go for.
I mean,
yeah.
They almost go for as much as an original M1 does.
Yeah.
They are nice. Cool. It's a topic for another day, but it's nice.
Yeah. We'll have to do an Italian rifles part 2, because we basically just talked about the Vetterli and the Carcano and just completely ignored the other ones.
Well, eventually we might do other things like machine guns or something, or submachine guns, but this was always about the main infantry.
The bolt guns.
Bolt guns.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about the Moschettos. We just make a general introduction, so it's good to do like that.
Well, I appreciate everybody getting together. I know it was hard to get us all together on the same time. Sorry for everybody for taking so long to get this together, but obviously getting 5 people together has been difficult, especially with Diego being in a different country. So unfortunately, that took a while, but hopefully this is making up for it with one of our longest recorded podcasts. We are
This will be a great car ride episode.
Almost 3 hours. It'll probably cut down to about 2:45, 2:30 maybe, but still a nice long podcast for everybody. Once again, Diego's website is carcanorifles.weebly.com. And
Weebly, Weebly.
Weeb. Sorry, start Weebly.com. Very good website for information on the Carcanos. Oh, sorry, Carcano. I'm going to do that incorrectly all this time now. And then Danny, do we have anything else? Check out Milsurp World on YouTube, obviously. If you're watching this on YouTube,
I know.
hi.
We still haven't put out the last one on
Well, I just
YouTube.
sent you the file because I'm
Okay.
lazy. So I sent you the raw file, so you should have that in your Discord. And then thank you everybody for else joining. I think we'll sign off now.
All right.
Bye,
Guys, later.
everybody.